The member of the public may verbally state their comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. Thank you so much.
All right. Dr. Nolan?
Here.
Ms. Bowler?
Here.
Dr. Bradbury?
Here.
Ms. Laredo?
Here.
Dr. Nunez?
I'm here. And can you tell me where my hand raising button is again? Anyone?
Sure. Under the participants, you have the little blue icon that you can click on. When you click that open, on the very bottom, there's a little hand icon.
Oh, I see it. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Prado?
Here.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Here.
Ms. Yanis?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. And now should we go ahead and ask for introductions of the rest of the panelists and the public?
I don't think that's necessary at this time. If we can just go on to the next agenda item.
Okay, well, the next agenda item then will be opening up for public comment. So moderator, if you would mind doing that, thank you.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment. Again, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with a question mark within the square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I am sharing instructions for your reference now. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right of the WebEx screen, type, "I would like to make a public comment." I will take the comments in the order they are received. I will now pause a moment to give the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. We have received a request for public comment from an individual identified as Chris Chung. Mr. Chung, you are unmuted. You do have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, members of the board. I'd like to just file a complaint, and I'm sure that you're fully aware of your severe backlog you have with staff. I've been dealing with a complaint I had with my animal that passed away due to being given 44 doses of insulin prescribed by a veterinarian. And mine is pretty cut and dry. You know, he should only have been given 5 cc's or 5 milli. I don't know what the dosage is, but it should only have been 5, but not 44. And this veterinarian messed up because he wrote down my dog's weight versus what the dosage should have been. So I was giving my dog 44 units of insulin versus 5, and my dog had severe brain injuries. You know, he went into a coma, and he came out blind and deaf, and then after that would constantly have seizures. So, but the thing is that I filed a complaint over 2 years ago, and I've been told the same thing over and over again, that the severe backlog, and they'll take an order received. And then a while back, they said, okay, it's been handed over to an expert, and when the expert provides, I guess, their review, and it comes back, then, you know, we should have some progress. But then the most recent thing is now it's still in the queue of being backlog, and there's over 200 ahead of me, which I don't fully understand why there's such a a severe backlog like that, and why it's taken so long. So I'm a little bit frustrated, and I ask for your help to try to help protect the consumer, us, because this veterinarian's still out there several years, and it's not protecting us. It's not protecting, and I want to protect other people in the future, and I want something handled. So the delay is, in my opinion, is hurting the consumer. So I just ask for your help to try to move this.
Our next comment is from an individual identified as Nancy Urich.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there right now. Excuse me, moderator, but I think a member of the public should not be cut off at 2 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes is adequate, and so I would like to go ahead and give them a little more time to finish what they're saying. That doesn't seem appropriate to me. So let's give them a little more time. If it goes past 3, we should warn them.
Sounds great. I will go ahead and re-unmute Mr. Chung to allow him to finish his comment.
Thank you. That would be great.
Wonderful. Mr. Chung, you have been.
Thank you very much. And I just, I just want to reiterate that, and I don't know what the total role is of the medical board, and so I'm kind of coming at you from a very naive perspective, but I'm hoping that it's to protect the consumer and it's to hold these veterinarians accountable to the standard in which they're supposed to be practicing, and the delay, the longer it takes for a case to be reviewed, many other animals can be hurt in the process. And I just want to, hopefully, and I understand, she also commented that you guys were considering hiring more people, but I don't know if if the issue is of more people. Yeah, that would definitely help. But also, is there a supposedly quota or time frame in which some of these cases are supposed to be handled by? And I understand it takes a while for things to go through and be reviewed, but I don't understand why a complaint 2 years ago I still have several hundreds ahead of me, and I don't quite understand why it's taken so long. So I don't want to keep going on, but I just want to say I hope that we can move these things quicker, just to protect our animals, and the consumer, us owners, and everything like that, because I want to hold these veterinarians accountable, and get those veterinarians that aren't practicing per standard, corrected. And so thank you very much for your time.
Our next public comment comes from an individual identified as Nancy Ulrich. Nancy, you are unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I would like to bring to your attention an issue that I have mentioned before, which is that of RVTs who are foreign graduates have no way of becoming licensed in California at this point. And we have an excellent candidate right now who is a graduate of a 4-year RVT program in England from a public university. And I just don't understand why the Veterinary Medical Board is reluctant to act on Section 4841.5B, which gives the board authority to determine equivalent education. This is no different than looking at an alternate route application. As a matter of fact, it's simpler than looking at an alternate route application because we have a complete syllabus and a transcript which shows all the courses that the person took. So I would encourage the Veterinary Medical Board to reconsider looking at foreign graduate applications, particularly people who come from English-speaking countries, under Section 4841.5. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from an individual identified as Katie. Katie, you have been unmuted.
Hi, so I have been in the industry for about 10 years. I started with RDVM and have been working specialty practice for the last 8 years in various services, dermatology, oncology. More recently, I am an emergency technician lead. And at this point, the issue I'm bringing to you is staffing to patient ratio. Hospitals have cut down their staff hours, but we're still seeing so many patients. We're so busy with the influx of patients that it's just unreasonable. There's some days where we'll see 30 patients just on emergency services and turning away patients at the door because we are just at capacity. And those 30 patients that we'll see don't include the appointments and scheduled procedures and all of the other things that happen on a daily basis. And we'll only have 3 technicians. handling all that and supporting sometimes up to 5, 6, 7 doctors. And, if there's any way that you could set a standard for the staffing to patient ratios, the help would be greatly appreciated. I mean, I know that you guys have the ability to revoke licenses for premises and RVTs. So if there's any way to just set some sort of standard so that the technical staff isn't suffocating and the patients aren't being um, denied the quality care that they need.
Our next public comment comes from a individual identified as Ryan Dowling. Ryan, your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning, board. I want to open and say I'm Ryan Dowling of the ILWU, the International Longshore Warehouse Union. We represent a number of workers along the West Coast, and I want to echo the previous comments, but I also want to acknowledge that staffing is an issue, not only in our industry, but it looks like for your guys' agency. I understand that revenue and your short staffing has led to a huge backlog in dealing with a lot of the concerns and complaints that people have in the industry. So I want to acknowledge that. That said, our issue right now is with staffing, and I wanted to read a couple of comments that we're getting from workers, from members who are concerned about the patient care that they're reading. So this is a quote. These are not my words, but this is a pre-COVID statement. We are understaffed and so overbooked so that the dental techs had to do their own anesthesia monitoring. The check patients recovering while doing other dentals. A dog vomited and laid face down in there for an undetermined amount of time until another tech saw this. That animal was then transferred to an emergency hospital and died a few hours later. The tech was, effing devastated, and we were all extremely angry for her. The manager allowed our doctors to then double and triple book instead of giving her an assistant to help or assigning a tech for patient recovery. After this incident, a lot of us have begun to reflect as to whether or not we should stay there, even while management was blaming us for not being able to do, as we thought, 20 things at once. This quote right now is actually during COVID time. I'm a tech in the ICU. Some days I see 4 critical patients, plus or minus a few hospital patients needing watching. Some days it's been actually up to 18 actual ICU patients. I have no designated assistant, and on surgery days, I have to share the space with recovery and often help the assistants in recovery, 1, because I'm the closest, and 2, because I'm the most experienced. I normally suffer from anxiety, depression, and now I feel like PTSD. But this is the pandemic. This pandemic is pushing me to places I didn't know I was capable of, and it's hard to constantly keep my head above the water for my patients. And yes, I've made mistakes. I've been injured as well, and we are so understaffed, but we have to stay undeterred. And I'll just read 2 more. This is also again during COVID. 11 to 15 patients per ICU tech during the day and overnight. Because of this, patients have been fluid overloaded, missed pain meds, been found dead in their kennels. My department, which is critical care, is so slammed and understaffed that we are just having to quickly transfer them to the ICU and get to the next one. We have to call other departments for codes because there are just not enough of us to go around. Patients are sitting in their own excrement for hours, regurgitating and in need of an NG tube, but no one is available. Catheters are blown out, but none are available to immediately replace. It's been so freaking hard. And then the last, this again is during COVID. I work in a specialty hospital. I've seen patients in our ICU get hours behind on medications, including pain meds, because there aren't enough ICU nurses to keep up. Sometimes the scheduling is an issue. Sometimes staffing is an issue. Sometimes the ratio is 1 ICU nurse to 20 patients, plus or minus maybe an ICU assistant. So again, we understand that you guys are backloaded with these issues. The gentleman who opened up today's public comment spoke to this. What we are asking is if you guys could help set some kind of standards for general practice and specialty. We know that you guys don't have the oversight to enforce it, but just something that we can point to other than the employers who seem to prioritize the volume and of patients going through the door than they do the quality of care that they have or the workers once those patients are in the door. Thank you so much for your time.
Board President, that is all of the requests that we have received. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
The feature has been closed.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to agenda item number 4, review and approval of board meeting minutes, starting with the January 30 to 31, 2020 board meeting minutes. Board members, do you have any corrections or comments on those?
Do you
Okay,
want to
I need
or at the end?
I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Do you want to motion to approve them one at a time or do it all at the end?
I think one at a time, and it looks like Kathy has a comment. So did you have a comment on the January meeting minutes?
Yes, I think so. Hold on a second. I just want to confirm that I have only one. On page, I thought there, and I just wanted to clarify for my own edification, on page 2, regarding Dr. Pascoe's comments at about the, what do you call it, faculty licensing. I thought there was some staff response during that dialogue, and it isn't contained in the minutes, and I was wondering, maybe I just imagined it, but Jessica, you would probably know, or Tara, but that was a question on these minutes, I think.
I don't know that offhand, but we're happy to go back and take a look at them. Perhaps what the members could do is approve a motion, do a motion to approve the minutes with the caveat that if additional information needs to be added, then we can do that.
That was my only question on this 7 minutes.
Okay, looks like Mark has a comment.
I raised my hand this time. Motion to approve with the caveat that if there's staff comments to Dr. Pascoe's comments, that be added to the minutes.
Okay, is there a second? That was Kathy Bowler seconding. So all those in favor, raise your hand.
Sorry, we have to go to public comment first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And then I have to do a roll call vote.
Oh, roll call vote. Sorry. I was going to try to use the raise the hand thing just for the heck of it. Okay. So moderator, if you wouldn't mind opening it for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature. If you would like to make a public comment, please utilize the reference displayed on your screen. I will take all questions in the order that they are received. I will now pause a moment to allow participants to access and submit their requests. Dr. Noland, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please. And then Jessica, would you call the roll?
Ms. Bowler.
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury.
Yes.
Ms. Laredo.
Abstain.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Ms. Prado.
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Ms. Yanis.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now we'll take a look at April 23rd, 2020. Any comments, board members? Kathy, is that your hand up? Mark?
Sorry, it's up by accident. How do I un-up it?
You hit the little hand button again.
I am, but it's not going away.
Motion to approve.
Well, since your hand is up, Kathy, do you want to second it?
Yeah, I'll second it, but I'm sorry, moderator. It's not letting me remove my hand. I apologize.
I will try to see what I can do to lower it on the back end.
The icon won't disappear. The icon will still stay there.
Yours is gone now, Mark, so.
Yeah, icon doesn't disappear, Kathy. It's just if you hover over it, it should say raise hand.
Okay.
Yeah, but the icon remains.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jessica, would you mind calling the roll?
We have to go to public comment after each motion.
Sorry, maybe we should have done this all at once. I apologize. Why don't we do that? Hold on, guys. Let's go ahead and I would like the board, if you have any comments on the rest of the meeting minutes for April, May, and June, and July. Shoot, I have to look. I have one for one of them. Let me look. Anybody have anything for the rest of the meeting minutes? Kathy?
I actually do. Sorry, and I figured the hand out. I apologize. On there's just a small typo on the May 14 minutes, page 9. And it's where it's in actually my statement. A temporary waiver to remove the condition-specific language to allow for telemedicine would be appropriate if a veterinarian deems it appropriate. I think would be appropriate was not supposed to be there. Seems redundant. So to allow for telemedicine if a veterinarian deems it appropriate, which should be the language.
Okay, did you get that, Jessica? Okay. Any other comments? I don't see any other hands raised. So anyone want a motion that we approve all of the rest of the
Sorry, Tara's, it looks like Tara's trying to make a comment.
My only concern with approving all the minutes at the same time is that some of the members may not be able to vote on all of the meeting minutes in case they were not present for the meeting. We just saw an example of that with the January meeting minutes where Ms. Laredo was not present at the meeting, so she abstained from the vote. So I just want to make sure that everyone who wants to vote on the meeting minutes can vote rather than having to abstain from voting on all of them.
Jessica, are you aware if anyone missed other meetings? It seems like we did have.
Yeah, I missed the last one, July 2nd. This is Alana.
Okay. Christina. You're muted, I think.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted the whole time. I unmuted myself. Got it. I think I missed the June 4th. It's hard for me to go back and forth. I have bad internet on the notes.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead then and approve we're on the April 23rd minutes. I need the moderator. Can we call for a motion and then have a public comment? Yeah, so we need to call for the vote. Anybody, we do that already?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Moderator, would you mind opening it up for public comment?
This is the moderator. The question and answer panel has been opened. If you would like to make a public comment, please indicate that you would like to make a public comment and send it to all panelists. I will take comments in the order they are received. I will now pause to allow individuals to access this panel and submit the request.
And Christina, I think you need to mute again, please. Thank you.
Dr. Noland, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please. And then Jessica will call for the vote.
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so board members, I would like to bring to your attention the May 14th, 2020 meeting minutes for comments. Jennifer, it looks like you have your hand up.
That was from before. I also can't put it back down.
Okay, understood. I don't see anyone having any comments, so can I ask someone to make a motion?
And just so you know, Dr. Bradbury, the May meeting is the one that you were absent. We have you down as present for the June meeting.
Okay, looks like Mark, are you willing to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that and call for the roll.
Sorry, we have to go to public comment.
Also, this is Tara. The motion to approve should be as amended. Is that correct with Ms. Bowler's revision?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez, are you willing to amend your motion?
Was that, did Ms. Fuller amend the January meeting minutes or the May 14th?
No, she was commenting about the April 23rd, no, the May.
The May minutes, yes.
Or the May 14th.
Yes, January had the caveat, May had the amendment.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
Okay, and my second is a yes as well. So now, moderator, would you mind opening up for public comment?
Public comment has been opened. I am displaying the steps for your reference. Please submit, I would like to make a public comment, and send to all panelists. I will pause a moment to allow people to access this feature and submit the request. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Abstain.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Ms. Yanis?
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
And Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now we'll move to the June 4th, 2020 meeting minutes. Any comments by the board? I have Jennifer's hand still up, but I think you can't put it down, right, Jennifer? Okay. Then I do want to entertain a motion. Anyone want a motion to accept the June 4th, 2020 meeting minutes as presented?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have Kathy moving to approve. Any second? And that was who?
Cheryl. Second.
Cheryl. Okay. So public comment will be taken. Ms. Moderator, would you open the public comment for us?
Public comment has been opened. Please submit a request to make a public comment by accessing the Q&A panel, submitting "I would like to make a public comment" to all panelists. I will take all comments in the order they are received. I will now pause a moment to allow individuals to access this feature and submit their requests. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Jessica?
Ms. Buller,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Abstain.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we'll go ahead and move on to the July 2nd. Any comments by the board? Looks like Mark, you have your hand up.
Motion to accept?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by, I believe, Kathy. Moderator, would you please open for public comment?
The Q&A panel has been open for public comment. Please submit "I would like to make a comment" and send to all panelists. I will pause a moment to allow individuals to access this feature and submit their requests. No requests have been received. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please. Call for
Ms.
the
Buller, Ms. Buller,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Abstain.
Dr. Noland.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. So with that, we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is a report and update from the Department of Consumer Affairs.
And today we have joining us Deputy Director Carrie Holmes.
Oops, where'd you go? Hi. I think I'm a little too close. All right. One moment, everybody. All right. Can you see and hear me? Okay. Hi, folks. Good morning, board members. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you again for allowing me to introduce myself and provide a department update to the Veterinary Medical Board. I was just appointed by Governor Newsom to beginning June 1st, so I am still very new. I'm here to serve as a resource, but I may not have the answer for you today, but I will know where to find it. I most recently came from the Senate, where I was Legislative Director for Senator Jim Bell. Before my time in the legislature, I served at the Secretary of State's office as an assistant deputy. And I've always been passionate about consumer protection, so I'm very happy to be here working at DCA with all the boards and bureaus. I'm part of a new leadership team, as you know. In January, Governor Newsom appointed Lourdes Castro Ramirez as the new Secretary of the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency. Secretary Castro Ramirez assumed her position March 2nd, and previously she served as the president of the University Health Systems Foundation. On March 5th, Governor Newsom appointed Jennifer Simoes as DCA's Deputy Director of Legislation. And finally, on April 16th, Christine Lawley was appointed by Governor Newsom as the Chief Deputy Director at DCA, and she joined us this month. She most recently served as the Deputy Director of the Medical Board of California. And in the past, she held my position. So I have some big shoes to fill, and I'm grateful she's there. So our work continues at DCA and at the board, even though COVID-19 has altered the way DCA does business now and the way we will do business in the future. DCA temporarily closed all the offices to the public in March in response to state and local stay-at-home orders to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. DCA and all the boards and bureaus have implemented telework plans and have required physical distancing for those employees who cannot telework. Licensing and enforcement functions at the boards and bureaus are continuing to take place, though many functions are done remotely. After following a risk assessment and implementation of a COVID-19 prevention plan, DCA offices reopened to the public on June 15th. DCA has implemented preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of all our employees and visitors. We are truly grateful to you for your continued service and to the staff who's being so flexible. I know your board has a few staff working on contact tracing, and I want to thank you for that. The public health work is so vital, not only to keeping people safe and healthy, but also to keep more of our economy and services open. I was impressed to hear that your board has been continuing not just with basic functions, but also working towards better service and efficiency. I hear you're working with DCA's Organizational Improvement Office, or OIO, to look at your licensing, enforcement, and inspections processes. OIO provides business process mapping and collaborative consulting to maximize resources, improve productivity, and increase quality. DCA is also working towards more efficient service. As you may recall from the January update, Director Kirkmeyer is committed to improving regulations, processes, and timelines. And now that she has more of her team in place, she'll be able to devote even more time to this priority. DCA's regulations unit was created to directly assist boards and bureaus with the regulations packages. For our guests on the call who may not know, regulation development at the department involves 3 entities: the board and bureau staff, the department staff, and the staff of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. The department developed an online system to electronically manage and track regulations packages and streamline review. It's called ShareWell. So the ShareWell testing with the pilot cohort is now complete, and there will be regular check-ins with the pilot groups to get feedback, and the feedback will be evaluated to determine the next stages of the rollout plan. DCA has also been busy issuing waivers needed to maintain the licensed workforce during COVID-19. To date, DCA has issued 36 waivers, ranging from continuing education, telehealth requirements, and licensure reinstatements. I'd like to ask you to look at the existing waivers and changes that have affected your board and licensees, and think about what might be helpful to keep in the long run. DCA is looking at identifying areas where changes could be made on an ongoing basis. I look forward to getting to know you and your programs a little bit better. I hope the day comes soon when we can meet in person, but in the meantime, if you have any questions or need anything from DCA, please don't hesitate to reach out. Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. Thank you again for inviting me to your meeting.
Thank you very much for joining us. We really are, we welcome you, Carrie, and are happy to have you on board and wish you all the best as you are onboarded and get used to everything. It sounds like you've already hit the ground running, so welcome. That's great.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan.
Any questions from board members for Carrie?
I raised my hand. I have a question.
Okay, Mark, you're on.
Welcome. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
I'm sure we will become your favorite board. Hopefully so. I just had a question about the surveillance and tracking program that we've given up to we're going to be giving up to our staff members for that important program. But it might be hard to answer. Do you have a timeline on how long that is going to be? Do you predict that? How long will it be?
So you're asking about a timeline for the contact tracing program? I don't actually have a timeline on that. I could check with public health and see if there's any estimates, but Jessica may know more as well from actually working with the staff who are going there.
Yeah, we've been told it's going to be 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jennifer, you have your hand up, I think.
Still from before, but great to meet you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Good. Good. Well, thank you very much. Jessica, do I need to open it up for public comment?
You can, if they might have questions for Carrie.
Okay, so moderator, would you please open up for public comment?
This is the moderator. The question and answer feature has been opened. If you would like to make a public comment, please submit "I would like to make a comment" and send to all panelists. I will take questions in the order they are received. I will now pause a moment to allow individuals to access this feature and submit their requests. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please. And Carrie, it looks like you are off the hook.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 6 on the agenda: review, discussion, and possible action on multidisciplinary advisory committee report. Christy.
Good morning, everyone. So yesterday we had our very efficient meeting. So I'll just report on that. Probably the fastest one in history. So we did talk about just a brief summary of the tiered premises registration that was discussed briefly at our previous meeting. We have a survey which has been sent to the MGL email list that we have, and it's going to be representing, hopefully we'll be getting a representation back from over 3,000 emails that we have on file. Our hope is to gather enough data in order to better evaluate what type of tier structure for premises permits can help us in reducing some of the RVT licensing fees and to gain back some of the $1 million is basically what we are trying to make up for. It must generate approximately $1 million. By October, we will have enough of an idea of whether we will need to continue the survey or consider other avenues of gathering data, including sending the survey through the premises permit renewal in May. So that was something that we discussed yesterday. There, we've already got some questions back. We discussed some of those questions, whether they should answer pre-COVID and data, or they should answer post-COVID data. Some of the future agenda items that were discussed by committee members included the continuation of cannabis guidelines, continuation of the complaint audit process with more defined purpose, telemedicine, dental radiography, the nurse initiative monitoring, and then, as Nancy Ehrlich mentioned earlier, approving RVT applicants from other countries, specifically ones who have graduated from four-year colleges, and is there a process for approval? The number of premises an MGL can hold, and the VCPR, and is it the relationship between the hospital or the veterinarian? And discussing requirements for this, follow-up care, how it relates to telemedicine, and when a hospital has multiple veterinarians, is the VCPR transferred among the veterinarians? So those were just some of the topics we talked about for potential future items. That's our report. Any questions?
Thank you, Christy. Any questions from the board? Looks like Mark has his hand up.
Two of those future topics that you talked about, I think, are important to address. The first one is VCPR, how transferable. At this point, the VCPR, of course, is between the veterinarian and the patient and the client, but there are provisions for that VCPR to be extended to other doctors in the practice. So, for example, if a patient comes in and wants a refill of a thyroid medication, but they've never seen that pet, but another doctor in the practice has, all the records are appropriate, then the doctor that's at the hospital can prescribe medicine without ever talking to the client and not technically having a VCPR. But with more and more telemedicine happening now, I think we need to look at the question on whether or not the VCPR can be transferable to somebody who's virtually, physically not there. A lot of practices are doing phone services where a client can call the hospital after hours and talk to a veterinarian, and that veterinarian can give them information, and the client may assume that that's all part of the hospital and that all that VCPR has been transferred to the online doctor. So issues like that come up with how transferable the VCPR is. I think that's an important stuff for the MDC to discuss. And the second topic, I was a little bit confused about foreign graduates, RVTs, the application process for California. Wouldn't that be a national issue first? Because I know that AAVSC is working on some sort of pay-like program for foreign graduates of RVT programs. So should the national deal with the first 4 states?
Perhaps. I think to Nancy Ehrlich's point, the statute allows the board to approve what they deem as equivalent. And so the board would be able to write regulations to deem other equivalent education and experience. And I think that that's what she's requesting the board or the MDC do.
So it would be like an alternate path program. Okay.
Great. Any other board members have any questions or comments?
I do.
Okay, great.
In for the international RVT topic, you know, when I was reading over the rulemaking packages and kind of reviewing some of the regulations that were already, I think, in place, isn't it similar? Like, we could look through, there's these alternate programs, and how is that not, you know, if it meets all of those requirements that we're in an alternate program, which it kind of does, I think, because it has, like, if you have a mentor and they've taken these classes and so on, how is that not translatable? Is it just, I don't think I saw in there, although I haven't reviewed it since this topic came up today, but I didn't see anything in there saying that it had to be on US soil or in Canada. So maybe I'm incorrect in that, and it just seems like this path is already there, but what's the difference?
We may want to open it back up to Nancy for further clarification on that, but it's also something that the MDC can, at the very least, research and see if there would be any additional changes that need to be made.
Well, and I think that's where we need to go, is we need to make sure that it's very clear, and we make sure that it is clearly defined that we can accept these applicants, and they can sit or for the national exam. And I think that's what we're making sure that they can do.
Okay, I don't see any other comments by the board. Thank you so much, Christy. And I have a confession to make. I was late joining the meeting, and by the time I was ready to jump on to It was gone. So that was pretty impressive. I was shocked.
Dr. Sullivan made a comment that it was going to be a quick meeting right in the beginning. We all said, no, don't jinx it. And sure,
Yeah.
it was good. We were very much done and it very efficient yesterday. So yes, it was nice.
That was pretty impressive. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item, or do we have
Dr. Nolan, it looks like Kathy wanted to make a comment, and then we should open up to public comment.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Kathy.
Well, thank you. It's really quick. Before we got finished with the MDC report, I just wanted the board to go on record as thanking Dr. Pollard for all the great work that he's done. I know this was I think yesterday was the last meeting for him. And Christy, thank you very much. But anyway, just wanted to make sure we said that.
Yes, and I should say thank you to Dr. Pollard because he has done a lot for the committee. He's been incredible for just stepping in, being our chair, I think reluctantly being our chair. And he's done an incredible amount of work. So I can't thank him enough. And I know our committee thanked him yesterday. But I also think he's glad to move on. So thank you. It's very, very much appreciated.
And members, just so you know, Ms. Plasky was elected chair yesterday, and Dr. Lazarchuk is elected vice chair.
And this is where we're all very, very sad, Dr. Pollard, because we would love to have you here and present you a plaque, and we were hoping to honor you. And we do have a plaque, I think, coming, but we're going to have to mail it to you. So again, I would echo, the whole board would echo what Christy said about how grateful we are for your leadership and how delightful it's been to work with you. And I hope that, as you've mentioned to me already, you're not going to ride off into the sunset. So thank goodness for that. We appreciate it. And we also welcome Christy. Thank you for stepping up, and Dr. Lasnoff as well. We appreciate that. Any other board public comment before I go to Mark? I think has his hand up.
Jessica, answer the question.
Okay, moderator, would you open up for public comment, please?
At the board's direction, I have opened the question and answer panel. If you would like to submit a public comment request, please type, "I would like to make a comment," and send to all panelists. You do not have to identify yourself to make a public comment, and I will respond to all requests in order that they are received. I will now pause a moment to allow individuals the time to access this feature and submit their requests. We have received one request as of now from an individual identified as Nancy Elkrich. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi there. This is Nancy Ehrlich. I just wanted to clarify what I was suggesting about the foreign graduate RVTs. The board has the authority under the statute 4841.5 to determine equivalent education to graduation from a 2-year approved RVT school. Because of that statute, the board created the alternate route. Now, a foreign graduate RVT doesn't qualify for the alternate route because the alternate route includes a requirement of 4,416 hours of work underneath the supervision of a California licensed veterinarian. So a person coming from England is not going to have 2.5 years worth of work experience under a California licensed veterinarian, and in order to qualify into that category, would have to wait 2.5 years before they could be licensed. So I am suggesting that the board review the possibility of using their authority for equivalent education to look at candidates like one that I have in my briefcase who is highly qualified and who really wants to work in California. And we hear that there's a terrible shortage of technicians in California. Here we have people who are highly qualified and want to work here, but there's no way for them to get licensed. So I would encourage you to look at this seriously, and I think that we can get some very good RVTs out of this.
Dr. Noland, no additional requests have been received. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you very much, Christy. I appreciate your time and your report.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is interviews, discussion, and possible appointment to fill our vacant veterinarian and registered veterinary technician MDC positions. And just to kind of clarify to the board how this will work, we have emailed you the questions. We will start with the RVT position. And we have 2 candidates. We will go ahead and interview those. And then I will ask for a motion and we will vote on that position. And then we'll move on to the veterinarian position and interview the 2 candidates and then vote for that position and entertaining a motion. Does that make sense to everyone? Nod heads, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to, does everybody, let me ask you this though, does everybody have their questions? Does anyone need? I don't see anyone having issues. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jessica, then. And I don't see an order of asking questions on the ones that I got.
So in the email, I provided a list of board members in the order that they are on the agenda. So I recommend just asking them in the order that you're listed on the agenda.
That wasn't on Rob's email that I can see. Did you send another email?
Did anybody else get the email?
Yes, there's 2 emails. Rob sent one and Jessica sent.
There we go. Okay. Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay. I'm on the second one now. Okay, so that means I'll go ahead and ask the first question of our first candidate. So, Jessica, I don't know who the first candidate is, so can you clarify that?
Sure. So the first RVT candidate is Ms. Anita Levy-Hudson. She's an RVT. And Ms. Levy-Hudson, if you wouldn't mind activating your video.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
That's great. Well, welcome again. Actually, I've met Ms. Levy-Hudson with the first interview round, and we welcome you back again. And so the first question that I have for you today, and it's similar to one we've asked you before, how are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board or committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
I am as familiar as I can be. I feel like this is a wonderful, huge area for all. I just don't think I'll ever know everything. There's quite a lot to it, but I am familiar with the basic functions. Yes.
Maybe it wouldn't hurt to just give a minute, just a brief minute to highlight your background for the committee. They have read, the board has read your packet, but just to introduce yourself, I think that would be appropriate.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, my name is Anita. I'm a registered veterinary technician here in California. I've been licensed since 2007. I've had quite a lot of time in the field, more than I want to say out loud to show my age. But it's been varied with private practice. I worked for a little while at Carrington College in a vet tech program. I've volunteered with disaster response and also with CARVDA, the California RVT Association, and NAVTA, of course, as the district representative there. What drew me into being here today at this moment was really just seeing how much impact we could have on the profession just by participating and showing up. And that's kind of indirectly the circle that brought me here today.
Great, thank you very much. And then I'll pass it over to Ms. Bowler for the next question.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, Anita. Nice to see you again.
Good morning.
Good morning. And you've answered a little bit of this, but maybe you could elaborate slightly on how do you feel your particular education and experience have prepared you for this position on the MDC?
I think the way that my experience has prepared me for this is that I've been what I would consider to be the average person. I went to school, I've worked in the field, I've done my time. I've experienced the different changes that we've gone through. Sometimes it's growing pains in our industry. And I also can see where we can do a lot of improvement. When I first started attending the veterinary medical board meetings, I was so surprised and impressed of how much goes on. And I kind of looked around and was wondering if everyone knew this, if this was available to everyone. And having my perspective being just, I'm not having my perspective be in general practice, I think is helpful because I could represent or have the input on what just a general basic day is for people. I'm not coming from an area that's very specialized in one area in one method of practice. So I feel like having that varied sort of representation of what's happening on a day to day would be helpful to the board because I'm still in everyday practice and still seeing what our challenges are as we face them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Christina, I think you have the next question.
Okay. A few technical things here. Okay. Recommendations made by the MDC are based on its consumer protection. The consumer protection mandate, and are not always popular with the general profession. How do you think you will be able to handle making decisions based on the needs of consumers that and their pets that may be unpopular with your colleagues?
That's a good question. I think that's definitely something that you guys, I've watched you guys have to deal with from time to time. I feel like having an explanation, being able to explain the reasoning behind that and why that is a consumer protection is really a great bridge to that. When you just simply just come, if an organization just kind of puts out just a rule or a change that's hard to swallow, it can be really difficult. But if the reasoning behind it is clear, I do believe that makes that a little bit of a softer blow if it's something that's unpopular.
Jennifer, I think you have the next question.
Okay, let me switch windows here. Hi, Anita. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So, are you familiar with current trends in veterinary medicine, and are there any issues that have affected you directly?
Yes, I am familiar with many current trends. Obviously, right now we're talking a lot about COVID and how that has changed things. I think that would be first and foremost in most people's minds. I'm sorry, can you tell me the second half of your question again?
Yes. Are there any issues that have affected you directly regarding the current trends?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes, very frequently. Current issues have been for me personally things like title protection. That's pre-COVID, right? Having that recognition in the practice and encouraging people to have a reason to continue to get become licensed and become titled. It's important that we maintain that for them. That's something that I feel is a very core belief for me because I saw the option to stay an assistant and I still could do a lot, but I really wanted that additional opportunity. Post COVID, I think right now for all of us, it's curbside and keeping up and dealing with a very jam packed calendar with maybe less staff and having to manage the extra workload and do it with a smile and maintaining our own sanity while we do it.
Okay, Mark, I think you have the next question.
I do. This just briefly aside, and this is not meant to influence anyone's opinion on the candidate, but these are new questions, and I like them. They're much better questions. Do they come from our nomination committee, or do they come from HR, the PTA?
They came from prior MDC interviews. They're the same questions.
No, they're not. They're a little bit better. I think they are.
Well,
Anyway,
they've been tweaked a little.
They've been tweaked a little bit. Yeah.
Yes.
I like the tweak. Question number 5. Back to Anita. Do you have any issues that you would like to see the MDC addressed?
Oh gosh. Yes, absolutely. Personally, I do. Yes, I'm always looking for opportunities to make things. If there's processes that are cumbersome and we can make them easier, that's always desired. Especially, like I said, for assistants that want to become technicians, and making sure that the reasoning for that action is worth it for them. Um, I'm speaking in vague general terms because I don't have a specific set of things that I would bring in. But I think my motivation for wanting to participate is to make the field better. Also, my motivation is that I just didn't know this was an option for so long. I would love to try to, and I've been coming for a couple of years to the meetings, and I'm always trying to get more participation from people, because in our current world of social media and things just kind of not knowing the processes for things, I think is very, very important. Or not knowing the processes is a problem, and I think bringing that to the other technicians is very important. So I think as far as what I would bring to the MDC, for sure, is I would bring the want for more participation from our industry, from our people in our industry.
Yeah, it's amazing how many things we talk about at our meetings, and the question is, why doesn't everyone know about this, and why don't we have more come in? So thank you to those answers for what I believe is a new question.
Great, and Diane, you have the last question.
Yes, and it's pretty simple. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us, with the board?
Oh, I guess I would just like to share that I am so appreciative for this process. Nancy Ehrlich has been a long time participant of this, and she's really shown me a lot of information, and I've learned a ton. I know there's a ton more to learn, and I'm really excited to try to get more of that participation, like we were just speaking about, because we have to all work together. I feel like sometimes when the board makes decisions and there's a lot of bad feedback or negative feedback, I feel like half of that is just having not known these things were happening. So I'm doing my best to try to, let others know, hey, this meeting's coming up. You can get online, you can look at it, so that everyone can kind of participate at their level that they feel comfortable.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your willingness to apply and to serve your profession. That's
thank you very much.
Very laudable.
Right back at all of you. All of you have worked really hard.
Great. Okay, I think we need now. We'll go ahead and move on. Is that right, Jessica?
Right. So the next RVT candidate is Ms. Leah Shepelt, who's currently serving on the MDC.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and welcome. We appreciate your time, Leah, and I think that Cheryl has the first question now.
All right.
You're muted, Dr. Waterhouse. There you go.
Good morning.
Hello.
How are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board or committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
Okay, so I have been involved as a MDC member now for 3 years, so I am quite familiar with the licensing bodies and all of those things along with it. And prior to my time on the MDC, I also attended the Veterinary Medical Board for a number of years, so I have quite a good understanding of how things work.
And I don't know if you were aware, Leah, but we did ask Anita just to kind of do a brief introduction of their background and who they are, so that make sure the board, I know the board's had your packet to look at, but and know you from the last few years, but that would be great.
Of course. So my name is Leah Schufelt. I have been licensed in California as an RVT since 2002. I moved here shortly after graduating with my bachelor's from Michigan State in veterinary technology. I have worked in emergency medicine, day practice medicine, and currently specialty radiation oncology, and also teach at Mesa College in their vet tech program. Other than that, I've also been very involved with our local San Diego County Vet Med Association and the CVMA as a member of the House of Delegates there, and on the RVT committee for CVMA. So I think that's a brief overview of who I am, and then also being on the MDC the last few years.
Great, thank you. And now I think, Alana, you have the next question, number 2.
Hold on, let me pull up how do you feel your education and experience have prepared you for this position?
So I think, as I kind of just briefly went over, I've had a lot of experiences in different areas of practice, including day practice. I actually even worked in food animal back at Michigan State, emergency, specialty, and organized medicine as well as education now. So I do think I can see things from a lot of different perspectives. So I think that helps prepare me for a lot of the topics that we discuss, and having, opinions and background in them.
Great, thank you. It looks like I have the next question for you, Leah. So recommendations made by the MDC are based on its consumer protection mandate and are not always popular with the general profession. How do you think you will be able to handle making decisions based on the needs of consumers and their pets that may be unpopular with your colleagues?
And I do think that the consumer protection is such an important piece. It's a little different from the other types of medicine that I've been involved with and everything, but it's important to realize that's what we're here for and to have reasons behind what we're doing. And I think the explanation of that to people who may not understand is very helpful. And as far as how I'm able to deal with it, I honestly look at it a lot like the leadership role I have within my hospital. So a lot of times, people with more information, which would be us or things consumers have told us, make decisions that aren't always popular with people that aren't understanding that. So, I do have experience in giving explanations and helping people to understand as best they can why a decision is made. And then, sometimes those things just have to happen for the good of the consumers of the state, the good of the patients, the good of the hospital, whatever that may be. And we just have to understand that and be, firm in our decisions and look at all sides and do what's best.
Great, thank you. Kathy, I think you're the next question.
Good morning, Leah. Whoops. I don't know what the feedback is.
I think Cheryl needs to mute her.
Okay. All right. No, that's better. Thanks. Thank you very much. Nice to see you again. I know you're familiar, but with current trends in veterinary medicine, but are there any issues that have affected you directly, and could you elaborate?
Sure. I guess the biggest one that jumps at me would be cannabis, and that's because I work in, radiation oncology specialty. So I think, that's brought up to us on basically a daily basis. And, I look at it from the point of the pet owner as the consumer as well, that, we don't necessarily have all the research and things that we need to have, but owners, family members who are consumers and for their pets are constantly looking for guidance on this. And it's a sticky wicket, as all of us, know, or those that have been dealing with this for a long time. So certainly something that I feel like, impacts me on a daily basis is, that's probably the biggest of them. And then I think these days as well, the telemedicine as well is a big thing, just, being talked about all over the place, let alone just at, my hospital and how can we do that for the best of the, everyone in the California and the professionals. So that's probably the biggest guys right now.
Thank you.
Christina, you have question number 5.
Thank you. And thank you for coming. And thanks to both of you. I was so sort of overwhelmed with having to go from screen to screen for questions. I forgot to say that. But now I've figured I can actually look on my phone and still be on here. So I'm a doctor. Anyway, so thank you. Do you have any issues that you would like to see the MDC address? I know you just talked about cannabis. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think of the things that, we kind of have been working on, or new ideas, I think our biggest one, or the biggest one I would like to see would be the telemedicine and the VCPR. I think it's an interesting, kind of turn of events that perhaps COVID's just opened our eyes to this, but I think it's a big topic in our industry, and, things are kind of changing in medicine overall. And I think, some change along with them, or at least taking a good look at how we're doing things now and how we can maybe, change things for the good of the consumers as well would be a great thing. And then newly mentioned by Nancy both yesterday and today, I think especially in, with the great need we need for technicians, it certainly makes sense to look at, different routes for getting licensure and take a look at where we have, and if there's some opportunity to gain more qualified people, I would be absolutely for looking at that as well.
Great. I think the last question then goes to Jennifer.
Hi, Leah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the board?
I guess I would say I really enjoyed my time on the MDC, as well as, getting to know some of you and all of that. And I know there's always more work to be done, and I really value my time on the MDC and would look forward to the opportunity to continue.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here, both of you. RVT women are inspirational to us, so good job. So we are going to go ahead and entertain a motion or have some discussion prior to that. It's up to the board members about how we select this next, to select one of these excellent candidates. And I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted because one of the candidates for the veterinary position had an emergency at the hospital, so I'm kind of trying to juggle what to do with that. But let's focus here on this. Any board member comments? It looks like Jennifer has her hand up, maybe.
Yep, I have a monologue. So I will tell you that when I saw these two candidates for this position, I literally have lost sleep over this. Part of the reason that the committee and the board does such great work is the diversity we have. We all have different areas of expertise and different experience that we bring to the table. We're able to hash out the details. And I think that's something that's really important. And we have plenty of CVMA representation on the MDC. We don't have any CARVTA and any NAVTA representation. So when I saw Anita, I was excited. That's a CARVTA representation. But if you look at Leah's background, she won't brag about herself, but she should if you've seen her resume, and she has done such an amazing job. And historically, and I had complained about this before, we used to just let the incumbent, whoever was already on the MDC and eligible for reappointment, just no vote, no competition against any other candidates, we would just reappoint them. And I'm glad that that process has changed, but that now puts Leah in the awkward position of having to basically compete for her position. And I will tell you that there is a learning curve to all of this, as we all know, and everybody does such a great job on their second term. So Anita is just amazing. I don't Facebook, and I've had people tell me that they have seen her posts explaining the process and now they understand things. Apparently she's better at explaining things than I am. So again, I have literally lost sleep, and if I could give one of them my seat on the MDC, I would. I really don't even want to vote because they're both amazing candidates. So I just wanted to say that to both of you. You are both amazing. You make me feel a little bit bad about myself because you're both overachievers. We really can't go wrong. I will just say, as happy as I am that the process is changing, I'm really sad that we can't put them both on there. I'm done.
No, thank you for that input, Jennifer. That's really helpful. Any other board members would like to say something? Oh. Kathy?
Mic or hand. Sorry. I really want to echo what Jennifer just said. And you know, Jennifer has been sitting on the MDC for a number of years and is, of course, an RVT. So her perspective is extremely valuable. I was, because we were able to see I was impressed by the number of applications we received and the quality of the individuals, and really excited that there are people out there. I'm in my mind too, I'd love to take both or figure out some other way that we could work with or utilize the person that doesn't sit on the MDC, just because of the value that both bring to the table. I do agree that a lot of I'm torn too, because I like to see diversity and change, but I also know that these issues are really complex, and many of them, and that I certainly am a better vet board member, more competent, my second term or after several years than I was at the very beginning, and I think that really does help the prior service. So but I want to compliment both Anita and Leah. They're terrific, and they're such terrific professionals, and their dedication to animals and the profession is obvious. And so anyway, I just echo that, but I wanted to say that I think the past experience is also very important. So that's really what I have to say.
Thank you, Kathy. I think I would echo all of your comments, and Jennifer as well. This is a tough decision. Any other board members want to say something?
Hi, this is Cheryl. I'd raised my hand, but I don't know if you could see it. Yeah, I mean, Kathy just said what I was thinking, that both candidates are great. They both have great backgrounds. But I think back to, you know, what I was like in my first year or two on the board, and there is such a learning curve to it. It takes you a while to figure out the whole system. So anyway, I'm glad to see both of them on there.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any other board members? I don't see any other hands up. So I guess at this point, if there are no other comments, do we open it up to the public, Jessica, or is that, I don't know the answer to that.
You can open the public now, but once you have a motion, you need to open it up again. So you might want to do a motion first and then open it up.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion from one of the board members on this.
I move that we appoint Leah Schufeld to a second term on the MDC board, on the MDC committee.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And that was Alana, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, so any other further discussion by members of the board? Okay, moderator, would you mind opening it up for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the question and answer panel. If you would like to submit a request to make a public comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" and send it to all panelists. You do not have to identify yourself to make a public comment. All comments will be answered in the order they are received. I will now pause a moment to allow individuals to access this feature and make a public comment.
Dr. Noland, it's Christy, and it won't let me make a public comment because I'm a panelist, I guess. So I just want to raise my hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
So I would like to speak and just say on behalf of the MDC, and I know Anita, and I speak very highly of her. And however, I have to reiterate that with a lot of new members on the MDC, I would like to say that it's very hard to come on to the MDC and learn. And so I can't speak highly enough of Leah. She's a hard worker. And so coming on as a second term, I would highly recommend Leah, and just having her be there for a second term would be very helpful to the MDC. So I think that that is helpful to the MDC. And then I would encourage Anita to apply again, because this is what we do. I applied several times myself. Leah applied several times. This is what we do. Don't go away. Don't go away. And I just can't encourage that enough, because we need you. We need you out there, and we need you to continue to show your face and be present and learn, so that when you do start on the MDC, you hit the ground running. And that I cannot stress that enough. Thank you.
Okay, moderator, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Would you like to go ahead and close that?
Yes, I will. The feature has been closed.
Thank you. Jessica, call for the vote.
Ms. Bowler,
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
And just for clarification, I can't give one of them my seat?
no, you cannot.
Okay, then yes.
Oh.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Prado,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Ms. Yanes,
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Well, again, I want to thank you, Anita, very much. And I would encourage you to apply again as well. I think it's really extremely honoring that you've applied for this position, and we really look forward to having your involvement, even if you're not an actual member of the committee. So thank you again. And Leah, thank you for your service, and welcome to another term. Be careful what you wish for, right? So we're going to go ahead and take a break right now, and then when we come back, we will begin interviewing the candidates for the veterinary position on the committee. So let's go ahead and come back at 10:45. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and call the meeting right back to order from the break. I think Jessica's still not with us, but I just wanted to let the board know that one of the two candidates for the veterinary position has had an emergency, and so will not probably be available till later today. And so we thought we would press on and interview the first candidate and then try the second one. Yes, Jessica, jump in.
Dr. Noland, it looks like Dr. Johnson is still on. If we can ask if he is available for the interview right now. Dr. Johnson, are you able to unmute your mic? Okay, so perhaps he did have to step away.
I got the impression he might have left it connected, but stepped away to do. So we'll, if it's all right with the board, we'll go ahead and interview the first of the two candidates, and then we'll try Dr. Johnson again. And then if he's not available, we will postpone the second candidate's interview until later this afternoon. So
So with that, we have Dr. Jamie Payton as the first veterinarian candidate. Dr. Payton, are you able to activate your video?
Yes, it should.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. There's just a delay.
Okay, I do think I'm the first question asker. Am I right, or did I leave anyone out? I think it's me. Welcome, Dr. Payton. We appreciate you being here, and we know this is your second round, so we appreciate that even more that you're willing to come back and apply again. Thank you for doing that. And before I ask the first question, I would like to give you just a minute to give the board members a brief look at who you are and why you're here, that sort of thing. So.
Sure. So, obviously, my name is Jamie Payton. I am a veterinarian, board specialist in emergency and critical care. Right now, I am the chief of service for integrative medicine at UC Davis. So, my past is all varied. I worked as a technician prior to vet school, and then working in private practice, and now in academia. But also, I also work a lot in the community. Prior to COVID, more in person. Now more virtual, but doing consulting for pain management and wound care, and also doing a lot more disaster relief, both nationally and internationally. So I was really interested in coming back to, and I'm very grateful to be able to interview again for this position, because I do want to play a part in some of these issues. I think, having attended several meetings and really going in depth about some of the issues that are out there to help protect consumers and also maintain our qualifications as professionals, I want to take part of that, and I think it's important to help create change and maintain our standards.
Great, thank you for that. So our first question for you is, how are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board or committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
Yeah, I'm very familiar. After getting my license here in California and practicing for several years, and also I've learned a lot by some of the issues that arose that directly apply to what I do in practice, and coming to some of the meetings and really getting familiar in that regard, but also working hard to stay updated, and making sure that I maintain, the current knowledge of what's going on for laws in California.
Great, thank you. Kathy will have the second question.
Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you again. Thank you very much. And thank you for applying again. How do you feel your particular education and experience have prepared you for this position on the MDC?
I think my experience and how it prepares me to be on the MDC is sort of that I've had a varied sort of career. As I said, I started in college working as a veterinary technician in equine practice, both in the clinic and in the field. And then after, going through internship and residency, working in private practice. So seeing that aspect of starting two services from scratch. And then now coming to academia where, we're teaching students and seeing the next generation. But also, what I think I can bring to that is not only those experiences, but my current experience working in the community as well. I'm really fortunate to have my position in academia, but also do a lot of outreach. So I get to go and work with my colleagues and see some of the current things they're struggling with, as well as I do a lot of clinical rotation. So I see a lot of patients and clients, and I think all those things together kind of bring a broad perspective that I can bring to the MDC and look at issues really in depth, but also have good listening skills to see both sides and come to a critical conclusion of what we should do to advise the board.
Thank you very much.
Christina, I think you're on number 3.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie, for coming again and applying. It's great to see you here. And before I ask my question, I just also wanted to thank you for all that you have done in veterinary medicine and all you are doing in the community. And it really is commendable, and your dedication to the profession is amazing. So thank you for everything that you've done. With that, I will try and ask this question that is a little bit longer than the rest in a cohesive fashion. So recommendations made by the MDC are based on its consumer protection mandate and are not always popular with the general profession. How do you think you'll be able to handle making decisions based on the needs of consumers and their pets that may be unpopular with your colleagues?
So I think, one, thank you, Dr. Bradbury. I appreciate that. I'm really grateful to just be here. So thank you for your kind words. As far as, enforcing sort of unpopular views, as a leader and having done worked in different services, so creating services from the beginning, you have to institute policies that may not be popular. And I think all of us are seeing that right now with COVID-19. I feel like it's come to the forefront, instituting a lot of policies for the safety of our clients, the safety of our staff, that really are not very popular right now with everyone, because everyone has such diverse views about what should be done. So I think the way that I deal with that is really, one, making sure that I have all the knowledge that I need to feel comfortable with that policy and what stance we're taking. And two, then listening, because I think listening to people's concerns and what they feel and letting them know that we hear them is really important. And then three, being able to have good communication. And I think that's really what enables, me to deal with unpopular opinion about things that we're enforcing, is making sure that communication is in place. And that really helps resolve a lot of issues.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, you have question 4.
Good morning, Dr. Payton. Let me just switch my screen here to get your question. So are you familiar with current trends in veterinary medicine, and are there any issues that have affected you directly?
Yeah, so I'm always, trying to keep up and read what currently is going on. I think, when I look at the trends that have directly affected myself, my staff, and, our service, the top 3 that come to mind, I think some of them have already been mentioned, but number 1 is, of course, the ongoing cannabis issue. In integrative medicine, pretty early on, it became a very heated topic of what we should do and where to go, and making sure that we look at what the research is out there as well as the objective data. So that issue is still needing to be worked on, and I'm very interested in being involved in that. Number 2 is, of course, again, that's really come up, is the telemedicine component. I think with COVID-19, it really became a very sharp learning curve, I think, for everyone with telemedicine. And not in a bad way, but I do think that more and more issues are going to be coming up in that regard. And then the third issue that has been on and off and pretty heated is the physical therapy or animal rehabilitation issue, because we do that in my service. And so that's always an ongoing, it had some resolution, but I think because of that area continuing to expand, I think it will come up again at some point. So those are probably the top 3 trends that really affect myself.
Thank you. Mark, you have question number 5.
Thanks for applying again. You've previously been of service to the board with a informed presentation on the use of marijuana. I think it was, I don't know if it was to the board or to the MDC. So thank you for that. Question number 5. Do you have any issues that you would like to see the MDC address?
Yeah, I think that, as I mentioned, probably one of the ongoing issues that I think still needs continual work and clarification, and will continue to change as it changes both nationally as well, is cannabis. I think that issue, as we start getting more research out there, I think it will need to continue to be addressed and modified. The other big areas, I said telemedicine. Probably the third area that I think will start and is a personal interest of mine, but also I think will continue to start arising is the area of disaster medicine. Having worked with some of the boards in Australia and some of the other state boards on some of these issues, I think that may start coming up in the future, and it would be interesting to have the MDC look into that more in depth.
I can't imagine what kind of disaster California would have been.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our wildfires aren't going away, and I think we're trying to find better ways for everyone to stay safe and protect the animals and protect our people too. So.
Thank you.
Diane, you have the last.
My question is very easy. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the board?
I think that, my main thing I want to express is, my desire to help and, go through these issues. I think that I really, having the small amount of experience as far as with being at meetings and going into these issues is really bringing that critical thinking approach, looking at all the what's out there objectively and coming to independent views, but also then listening to everyone else and really trying to find the best stance to, ultimately uphold the board's mission to protect consumers and make sure that our profession is held to the highest standard. And, I'm very grateful for everything that you guys do.
Thank you very much, Jamie, for being with us. And unfortunately, I think we'll go ahead and try the second candidate, but we may have to have a period of time where we give him a chance. He had an emergency he had to step out and help with. So, Jessica, do you want to try to reach the second candidate?
Yeah, he did just email me and let me know that he did have to go to surgery. And so he's going to let me know as soon as the surgery is over to perhaps interview him later today.
Okay, so we're going to have to go ahead and wait for the second interview, Jamie. I apologize for that, but we will, I think Jessica will be in contact with you and we'll let you know. So thank you again for your time and for being with us today.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're moving on to legislation, Jessica. So now we're on item number 8, update discussion and possible action on the 2019-20 legislation. Turn it over to you.
Yep, and actually we're going to have the moderator allow me to share the screen so we all can be looking at the same thing. Okay, let's see if I can share content. Let's see. Okay, are you guys able to see my screen? Hello?
Yes, your screen is being viewed.
Okay, thank you.
We can hear you, Jessica.
Okay, so in the interest of time, members, I'm going to go ahead and go through all of the legislation, and then we can open it up to the board to discuss specific legislation and make any comments, if that's okay. So the first one, members, it was AB 2028, and this, as you see, has been amended. It was amended on July 8th, 2020. This is the legislation that requires the board to post board meeting materials on our website no later than 48 hours prior to the meeting. The board took an oppose unless amended position. Shortly after the board did that, though, the bill was amended again. And the amendments, it did cover one of the concerns that the board had related to requiring that all of the materials stay up indefinitely. That was struck from the bill. But the remaining concerns still are present. In addition, there was a pretty confusing section that was added to the language related to state bodies. It seemed a little bit contradictory of each other, and it was unclear on when those materials would have to be posted. I did speak with the staffer of this bill over a video conference, and I let her know all of the concerns that we had. They are open to further discussions. She was going to take the concerns back to the sponsors, who is the Nursing Association, to see what changes they may be able to make. I haven't had an update on that since then, but I think that I'm not sure if they're willing to change provided to prepared as we had requested. But they also explained that their main goal is to make sure that the public has access to all of the information that the board members have when making their decision. I've explained that oftentimes the board is given either materials from the public or from other state agencies that we don't have control over, so ultimately third parties. They're provided within that 48 hours or during the board meeting. So one thing that they said we had discussed is potentially if their goal is to make sure that all the information is available, and perhaps doing something to where you require a board to post the materials that are received during the board meeting 48 hours following the board meeting. That way the public would still have access to the information and the board wouldn't be prohibited from discussing any additional information provided by third parties. So again, we don't know if our amendments are going to be accepted, but I'll continue to provide the board updates on this bill. The next one is SB 627. This one still has not moved. It has not been amended, and a hearing date is not set. We will continue to monitor this and provide updates to the board should they become available.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question before we go to the next piece? Or should I wait till you're done with all of them?
Oh, sure. You can, if you have a question, I can answer any question you have.
The 48 hours meeting or materials that were presented at the meeting, did the issue of the ADA compliance come up with those types of materials?
Yes, that was also discussed. I discussed it with the staffer, and there are some other state entities who have raised the same concerns. They had talked about how some of the materials have things written in margins and is fairly difficult to make ADA compliant. So that's something that they are looking at to see if there's other ways that they can require that to be posted or provide an exception to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, did you have a question?
No, that's still from before. My hand won't go down.
It just seems so involved. I just have to ask you. So I have a quick question on that, on the AB 2028. Jessica, have you heard any other boards' positions on that? Have there been any other boards that have taken any positions that you know of?
Not that I know of. I think I reported at the last board meeting that Board of Behavioral Sciences was one of the first to take a position, and then they ultimately changed it to a neutral position. But I'm unaware of any other boards taking positions.
Okay, I think we'll press on. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so that was all for AB or SB 627 as well. I'm going to scroll through this. SB 1115, we did submit our letter of concern to the author's office and the sponsors. And the sponsor, I have been working with Judy Mancuso to address the concerns that the board has raised. And unfortunately, the bill was taken off calendar. So there's a lot of discussion about the bill being dead for this year. However, I do know that the author's office is still trying to get a hearing set for it. So I will continue to provide you updates as they are available. That's it for this one. The next one is SB 1347. And for this, members, I'm actually going to attempt to jump to the recent amendments. Let's see if I can share my... I don't think it's... Moderator, do you know how I can Oh, I think I got it. Are you guys able to see the proposed amendments that I'm pulling up?
It's just a gray box, Jessica.
Yeah.
Big gray box.
Jessica, if you go back into the file share and choose the share your screen.
Hold on, I'm trying. Okay, I'm gonna try to jump. Okay, can you see them now?
Yes, might make it bigger though.
Yep. Okay, is that better?
Yes,
that's good. Okay. Okay, so members, as you know, this bill is SB 1347 regarding shelters and shelter communities. As you know, there's very strong opinions on both sides of this bill. And the most recent update is what you're looking at before you are some amendments that the author is planning on passing, I believe, today, and should be published by the hearing on Monday. Members, the main amendments that have been made, and I'll scroll down, they've added some intent language to look at the oversight of shelters during our next sunset review. They've also made some amendments that address some concerns related to the first aid and also training. And those are here. And we can post these on our website. It's just we weren't able to post them on our materials in time for the board meeting. So with that, members, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the board for further discussion of this bill.
Okay, board members, if you'd like to make a comment. Jessica, can you scroll to page 98 on your... on restraint. Okay. Any comments from the members of the board?
I have a comment.
Yes, Diane.
Yes, hi. So I know that I've kind of been like the lone member on the board that has, been in favor of 1347. And I just want to reiterate again that, I think that Cal Animals is committed to continue to talking to the board, and that this is an important to be able to ensure that there isn't an increase in euthanasias. And so, I understand both of the considerations that we as the board have taken. But I just want to reiterate my position that being in favor of 1347 of, placing more requirements will essentially kill this bill. And so I just want us to be, to take that into consideration and understand the importance of this bill in terms of the rural shelters and what's needed there. I also know that, there's a FAQ that we have up on our website in regards to the protocols of what vets should be taken. And if I can pull that up real quick, about animal shelters practicing in veterinary medicine. And we state on our website that without a California licensed veterinarian present, is limited to basic care to prevent spread of disease and to protect the public and animals within protocols developed in conjunction with the California licensed veterinarian. This is in regards, I should probably read the entire sentence. The necessary and prompt veterinary medical care provided within city, county, and or city, county animal control shelters and or their agencies to protect the public good without a California licensed veterinarian present is limited to basic care to prevent spread of disease and to protect the public and the animals within protocols developed in conjunction with the California licensed veterinarian. I know that there also could be concerns that, perhaps then large shelters will then somehow not want veterinarians or use this as a way to get rid of veterinarians. But we have the California Food and Agricultural Code that requires any animals that are entering the shelters to be treated by veterinarians. And so there are laws in place, and I just don't think that large shelters are going to take this and as an advantage, and misappropriate this to be able to do away with their veterinarians. Really, this is something that is to be used to be able to protect small rural shelters that are unable to have veterinarians, to be able to have that assistance. So that's what I wanted to share.
Diane, can I ask, I think I heard you say something, I just want to clarify it. I thought you said that you felt that if the bill had any further modifications, it would be killed. Where did you get that in? Is that information you got somewhere, or is that an opinion?
No, that's my opinion. It seems that like anything that is going to require further costs, let me look through my notes really quick to be able to clarify that.
Okay, I thought maybe I misheard you, but I thought you said that any further modifications would risk killing the bill. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think as Diane's been the lone supporter, I've been the most vocal against it. And I'm a little bit frustrated, so I'll try not to go on a tangent, but I think most of the issues with this bill have been through misconceptions and misunderstandings. Some of the wording was, I don't know, just very confusing, but I still don't believe that the bill is in the best interest of the animals or the staff. And my concern is that I'm not a politician. I'm not a shelter director. I'm an RVT who worked in a shelter for 13 years. And this was written by, shelter directors and managers who see the big picture, but maybe don't see the intricate day-to-day details. And I could go on for hours with horror stories of things that have happened, but I do understand that there's a need in these rural shelters, but I don't think that the answer is to take away oversight and put the animals in a bad position and put the staff in a bad position. And I'm not going to be very articulate because I'm exhausted from going over this, but I just, in my heart, I cannot sleep at night supporting this. This is not in the best interest. We've just gone back and forth with this for years. We've had committees. I mean, I think this has been going on since before I was even on the board. And I just don't know what else I can say. I am an RVT. I have seen horror stories. I have lost sleep at night. I have had staff that has gone home on stress leave, and the animals need proper care. Remember that they are not just stray animals. Some of them are owned animals, and they all deserve proper care. They all deserve, to abide by legal requirements. And I understand the rural shelters need some help, and we were in the process of exploring that, and it just seems like we weren't done, and it stopped. So there is a solution. I don't think this is the solution. And I really want to help those few rural shelters, and I don't know how. And I feel like we've been focusing so much on this and this language that we're not really making any progress. But honestly, as somebody who has been in the trenches, so to speak, in my heart, I don't feel that this is the right answer.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, you're next.
Hi. Yeah, and I just wanted to say also, and as a public member, not a professional here, I understand where Jennifer's coming from, and I also understand where the advocates on this legislation are coming from, and certainly Senator Galgiani is one of the champions of animal welfare and a very great member of the legislature. And I just want to put that on record. I think there are issues with this. And one thing that's troubled me in the last few months of all of this is a lot of the back and forth and some of the heated rhetoric that has happened. I really want to reiterate that I think everybody on the MDC that worked for many years on this with all the stakeholders that they worked with to come up with the regs that we were trying to work through regarding shelter standards had all the best intentions, as do the advocates on this piece of legislation. And so I'm sorry that it has elevated to some of the language that I've seen in some of the back and forth from all sides. I do like some of these amendments, I want to say, about training and curriculum. I really can't speak to what goes on inside a shelter like Jennifer can, so I don't even want to try. But I did want to say that I appreciated at least some of these recent amendments to this piece of legislation. And obviously, I think we have talked about this for a long time, and obviously we'll live with and deal with whatever gets passed by the legislature. But again, I feel like I want to do the best for animals. I know everybody on this board does, and everybody on the MDC does as well. So just wanted to get that out there on the record with regard to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like either Christine or Cheryl. I don't know who was first, but let's start with Christine.
So
Christina.
Dr. Waterbury. No. So I guess I first had a question for Jessica because I haven't had a chance to read through all of the new language. How close is that to the CVMA's proposed amendments? Is there anything from that in there, or is this something completely different?
So the CVMA proposed amendments that the board had agreed with created a premises light registration option, and with the thought being that you would still have some kind of oversight and consumers would have some kind of recourse if something were to happen. That is not in there, but I know another thing that that CVMA was involved with was helping with these amendments when it comes to first aid and training.
And was the premise, the resistance to the premise license, it seemed to me like that was their argument against it was mainly it was cost for it. And so I'm wondering if maybe they actually don't want to have oversight. I'm not sure what that is. With this current legislation, the way it's written, what would happen if a consumer had their pet went to a shelter that wasn't, it turned out that it was, one that we're concerned with and why we are worried about passing something like this. And their animal was brought to it and died there or something. And then they, what would their recourse be once this is passed, if it's passed with the current language?
So I think that we have some of the proponents for the legislation that can speak to what they believe will be providing proper oversight. I do believe that they feel that local cities and counties would have authority to enforce these provisions, and that they would be charged with providing the oversight. Unfortunately, though, cities and counties don't have authority over our Practice Act, and so any of the provisions in this bill would be up to the board to enforce. However, this is providing an exception to license requirements, so we would not be able to do anything if these provisions were not followed. We've also had experience with local rescue groups. When we get complaints from rescue groups, they are under the exception because they own the animals. And when we get those complaints, we're unfortunately having to close them as non-jurisdictional because we don't have authority to enforce any of the provisions of the Practice Act on rescue groups. So that's a concern, but perhaps the proponents of the bill can explain further why they feel that there is proper oversight. But also the legislature did put the intent in the language in the beginning to further review oversight. As you all know, though, if that is the case for next session, that's going to go through the normal legislation. And so we're looking at potentially no oversight of the shelters until January of 2022. And I'm not clear on what the legislature would be reviewing when this oversight is taken away from the board. And it looks like Tara has a comment as well.
I just wanted to clarify the question about how these might differ from the CVMA's amendments. The CVMA amendments included a training component, which was helpful to better describe what training would look like. I think, though, that the board agreed with that training requirement because there would be a licensed veterinarian associated with that training. The recent amendments that you've been provided don't have any requirement for any affiliated veterinarian to provide that training. It almost looks like you could just get the training off of a website without any attention to the specific rural animal needs. So if for large facility or just the particular needs of the animals in that location, that's not a part of the amendments at all. That's a concern. Jessica, you said that you thought the training and the first aid provisions was what CVMA worked on. CVMA's amendments strike the first aid entirely, and the latest proponent amendments actually expand the first aid authority to include new activities. I just wanted to point that out. So that's on page 5 of the mock-up, so that effectively people volunteering at the shelter with no veterinary experience other than presumably the training could control external bleeding and direct pressure or bandaging, remove visible foreign objects from an animal's airway, administer rescue breathing and chest compressions. So that looks to be an expansion of what the bill currently has. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, to clarify, and perhaps CVMA can, or the sponsors can clarify, when I said that CVMA worked on this, I believe that they were working with the legislative staff and the sponsors after the last proposed amendments happened. Since then, I think they were involved in this, crafting this as well.
So thank you. So I guess I would love to hear from the people involved in the bill to hear what they have to say. But I guess one of my questions would be, and I don't even know how everybody else would feel about this, but if there was a limited premise license that there was no charge for under certain circumstances with costs, rural, whatever, would they still be against it?
Okay, I'm sure they will, hopefully we'll be able to address that. We do have, I think, Cheryl next.
Great, thank you. So, yes, I'm kind of with Jennifer here still. I'm so sorry that they've ignored the amendments that CVMA was pursuing as far as a modified MGL premise permit. It is a red herring that there are no veterinarians in these rural areas. There are veterinarians there, but they don't want to take the legal responsibility over something where they don't have full control. That's the problem. So this CVMA proposed amendment really solved the problem. And I'm sorry that they don't see that. And if we, possibly offer them, a greatly reduced or even free modified premise permit, we can see if that would help the situation. I also have lots of questions about this training. So it doesn't say if this training is for the facility as a whole, or if this training needs to be for each individual that works there. So as Jennifer has mentioned, there is a pretty high turnover. And so if this once every 3 years training that happens with the veterinarian training them, if that happens, say this year, and there's people A, B, and C working there, and within a year or 2 years, they're not there anymore, they've quit, and now we have X, Y, and Z, then maybe they're working there for another year and a half before the 3 years rolls around and we have to have training again. So it doesn't say if the training is per person or per facility. So I'd like an answer for that too. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark, you're next.
Okay. I probably first like to say that it's, unfortunate the most recent letter that came up. Knowing everyone that serves on this board voluntarily, we're not here to raise fees or issue citations. Everyone is dedicated to, I think both sides are dedicated to the same cause. And as Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we must go high. So I do think that we need to work with what's in front of us. That's really our only option. And I do like this list of training. Tara said that it wasn't done by a California licensed veterinarian. On page 5, section E, it does say that it's provided by a California licensed veterinarian. And then they also talk about frequency, that it needs to be done every 3 years. So, I think we really have to focus on what we like about the amendments that are in front of us and make suggestions on what needs to be done to make it the best it can be. And so I like what I'm seeing here on 5E. I think that addresses some of the points. The only thing that might be added to 5E is that that issue to address new hires or new employees that come in with such high staff turnover. Also, I would like some clarification on, somebody had mentioned something about recourse and oversight, because I think that's also another point of contention. Even if we offered free premise permits, we would probably get pushed back. Well, that doesn't matter because we don't want any oversight. We don't want to have to pay a fine or a citation or face any sort of disciplinary action. But that's the point, that somebody has to do it, because if not, it's going to be the same situations as rodeos. There's lots of humane groups that are coming to us with complaints about injuries that occur at rodeos. We don't have any jurisdiction over that. It is allegedly given to the local municipalities, and historically, local municipalities haven't done the job properly. So if oversight to these shelters are going to be given to the local municipalities, I'm not confident that they're going to do any better of a job with overseeing shelters than they have with overseeing rodeos that occurred in their areas. That would be an argument that I would kindly like to discuss with the opposition about how to get in effective oversight. And Jessica, can you clarify that date of 2021? I didn't understand what you meant when you said there would be no oversight at all by anybody until 2021.
Oh, sure. So I was just speaking to the intent language that says that they will continue to review the oversight concerns during the board's sunset review. And so, as you know, the sunset review is tied to, we have a piece of legislation for our sunset bill. And so if anything is added to that sunset bill, it has to go through the normal legislation. And so you're looking at any legislation tied to our sunset bill taking effect in January of 2022.
So I would suggest that we really be specific with amendments to what's in front of us. And I also addressed our extreme support in having some sort of oversight by the board. I'm okay with free premise permits, but I do think that we need to have some oversight.
Okay, I think Kathy, is your hand still up? Or if you, just FYI to members of the board, if you want to say something more, keep your hand up.
Sorry, mine's up by accident. I'm moving down.
Christina, how about you?
Yeah, I did want to just say something more. I wanted to somewhat echo other people's comments about how contentious this bill has been, and it really is sad to me that there's this perception that like we're trying to, control everything, and we just want to overstep our bounds. And some of the language that's being used, again, we really do our best to try and be fair and make sure, though, that we have the ability to protect both the consumers but also the staff at these places. As Jennifer said, like what if they are witnessing things that they know is wrong and hurting animals, and they have nowhere to go, they'll have nowhere to turn. And so it really would help, I think, because it would give people some accountability when they are in these settings, and it would protect on multiple levels. Now, yes, it would add work to us. Like, so we're talking about something like where we're going to be working harder actually to help bring people to the level that we want. But I just want to make sure that the public and the stakeholders understand that we're not trying to just control things for the sake of controlling things, but our goal really is to protect the consumers of this state and the animals of this state and the people working in our field. And in that vein is why I think a free modified premise license would be a good bridge, and I know that this bill is likely to pass. I know that there's various reasons for that, and so I also agree with Mark that it would be in everybody's best interest if we could find a way to kind of bridge the gap between these different sides and stop trying to be in opposition to one another. And I don't think that any of us are trying to be in opposition, but I think we have to be realistic in what's happening here and what's going to happen. But at the same time, if there's some way that we can bridge that gap and still protect the consumers, the patients, and the staff of these places, I think we need that would be my goal. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Jennifer, your hand is still up accidentally.
No, for real this time.
Okay, there you go.
I have a question maybe Jessica can answer, because I've heard a lot about how fiscally this will impact us. And I don't know if we have any stats on how many shelters actually do have to pay for their premises permits, because I did work for a very large open admission municipal animal shelter, and I'm under the impression that we had a premises permit, but it was no cost. So I don't know if we have any kind of statistics on that.
I don't have those statistics, but I do know that cities and counties do not have to pay a fee already.
So city and county shelters do not pay their premises permit fee?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Okay, I think maybe it's time to go ahead, and we are anxious to hear from the public members that are here. So moderator, could you go ahead and open up for comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with a question mark within the square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I am sharing instructions on the screen for reference. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right of the WebEx screen, type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send it to all panelists. Any other communication will not be responded to. It is not necessary to identify yourself in order to make a public comment, and I will take comments in the orders they are received. I will now pause a moment to allow people to access this feature. We have received several requests for public comment. An individual identified as Jennifer Fearing, your microphone is now unmuted.
Good morning, members of the board. This is Jennifer Fearing. I'm here today on behalf of San Diego Humane Society, a veterinary premise permit holder, and Best Friends Animal Society. And, we obviously value the important role of veterinarians in supporting the overall health and safety of shelter pets. And we're working diligently to help shelters attract and retain veterinary staffing. But many shelters are just simply unable to hire a veterinarian or have been unable to find one that is willing to accept the professional liability of maintaining a veterinary premise permit for their facility. I think we would disagree that the CVMA amendments are on point at exclusively addressing that. But there are other facilities throughout the state of California that are so outdated that they need millions of dollars of upgrades. So they are triaging the fiscal needs they have to provide animal welfare in their environments. And clearly, recognizing the significant disparity of resources around our state, it is not surprising that there are several obstacles that shelters may face as they work to obtain veterinary staffing. So we would very much like to see us all come together to adopt a support and resources attraction mindset and abandon this enforcement approach. So we urge the board to drop the opposition to the bill as proposed to be amended and work with stakeholders to advocate for resources to support the hiring of veterinarians, which is something we all agree on. And before I sign off, I just wanted to also raise a question about process. I participate in a number of other boards and commissions as well as legislative hearings, and I am puzzled by the VMB's process that has the members have a full discussion prior to hearing from the public. So I appreciate some consideration of that practice or a deeper understanding of why it works that way. Thank you very much.
An individual identified as Nancy Ehrlich, your microphone is unmuted.
Hello again. I would just like to make a comment that I'm actually very surprised that in all this discussion, no one has mentioned RVTs. Proper training should include an RVT or a person who gets this training. It's just, I'm speechless, which I know you think is unusual for me, because obviously an RVT is qualified to perform these procedures. So there needs to be an amendment that says proper training means a person is an RVT or has this training. That's my comment.
An individual identified as Ken Alteen, your microphone is unmuted.
Good morning and thank you. I'm the CEO of the Sacramento SPCA, and I'm talking to you from Siskiyou County, where I also reside at times, which has 3 vets, and next door to Modoc County, which has 2 vets. So there may be vets in the county, and these shelters are already working with these vets to provide the first aid to get the prescription medicine. So it's not like that isn't happening. And as my colleague, Ms. Fearing, pointed out, is getting those vets to extend their personal liability to these shelters, many of which are very small and very underfunded, has proven problematic. So we all want more care for animals in shelters. That I appreciate hearing that from all of you. I know that to be true. What I want to do is codify what's already in place and already follows your own website recommendations about providing first aid and being able to raise the bar by ensuring proper training with written protocols for everyone. And absolutely, let's make sure we're talking about individuals, not organizations or facilities. So I'm glad to hear you focusing on the improvement and not the punishment component of this. My biggest concern is these small counties. That's really what we're talking about. Are going to be faced with the decision if they can't find a vet who will extend the liability to them, they will do the minimum amount required by law, because they're required by law to care for these animals. And then when the 72 hours up, they will euthanize. Because remember, it's legal for these employees to euthanize animals. These amendments would make it illegal for them to provide the preventive care and basic routine care for them without that hard, if not impossible, to obtain permit. Thank you.
An individual identified as Melanie Sadek would like to make a public comment. Your microphone is unmuted.
Board members, staff, thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. My name is Melanie Sadek. I'm the director of a nonprofit animal shelter in the San Francisco Bay Area. I employ 2 amazing veterinarians and enjoy the benefits of holding a premise permit. I also sit on the board of directors for the California Animal Welfare Association. In 2011, I was honored to sit on a committee that was missioned to evaluate California sheltering. Dr. Kate Hurley from UC Davis's shelter medicine program was on this committee as well. Our objective was to evaluate how we could increase life-saving outcomes for California animals without placing a financial burden on shelters, or better yet, identify financial resources to support public shelters. After 2 years, we never found a path to additional financial support. When this committee launched, we were dealing with significant funding issues due to the Great Recession. Today, things may be worse. Public shelters throughout our state are experiencing significant budget cuts due to COVID-related challenges, and it's uncertain how long this will last. Over the last 5 years, public and private shelters have made tremendous improvements in life-saving outcomes in California. This is due to a strong commitment by animal welfare professionals to support each other through professional assistance and transfer partnerships. It doesn't hurt that our shelters have exceptional guidance and leadership provided by the country's best shelter medicine program out of UC Davis. I believe Cal Animals, the VMB, CVMA, and all animal welfares in the state agree that every animal in California deserves the best care. With this commitment, it's easy to embrace our governor's mission of California for all. That's why SB 1347 was introduced. This bill simply codifies existing shelter practices. In fact, the standards for basic shelter care of animals entering California public shelters was established in 2008 through a collaboration between the VMB and UC Davis Shelter Medicine Program and other stakeholders. In a conclusion statement issued by the VMB in 2008, the board recognized that California Business and Professions Code Section 4853 wasn't intended to include shelters within the definition of premises. Therefore, the board didn't require shelters to hold a premise permit unless they performed medicine that went beyond basic care. The board identified that shelters are regulated through the Health and Safety Code, Department of Food and Ag, Civil and Criminal Law. Clear guidance was still needed by the VMB to establish the most basic care permissible without a veterinary premise permit. And the VMB concluded that vaccinations, prophylactic treatment of parasites, and in-house testing for infectious diseases could occur when 3 conditions were met. The person performing the above needed to be an employee of the shelter. They must be operating under the direction of written protocols developed by a California licensed veterinarian, and the employee must have proper training. The above guidance provided a clear direction for California shelters and set today's operating standards. This board no longer supports the 2008 established guidelines, and it's unclear what prompted the change and why there is a new desire by this board to oversee all shelters, especially at a time when our state has been so successful. The passing of SB 1347 will codify the current basic veterinary practices in shelters to ensure all animals in California receive the same level of basic care regardless of that community's financial limitations. Without this, shelters that are under-resourced, roughly 25% in California, will only be allowed to euthanize. This will significantly increase our state's euthanasia numbers. In a perfect world, we'd love for every shelter in the state to have ample financial resources to ensure their physical structure and staffing exceed expectations. And if the VMB has found a way to supply financial resources to support the hiring of veterinary professional staff, cover fees and improvements to shelters' physical structures, please let us know. But until that financial support is established, we cannot allow animals and people in our lowest resource communities to suffer because we want to strive for excellence at all costs. I'm asking the VMB to please consider pulling your opposition and support SB 1347 as written.
An individual identified as Grant Miller would like to make a public comment. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, this is actually Valerie Fenstermaker. Grant and I are in the same room, so we can only use one name, but the CVMA's name has been tossed around, so I wanted to make sure that you are clear on our position. We remain strongly opposed to this bill. We do still believe it's a step backwards for shelter animals in California, and harm will be caused. At the end of the day, there's a bill in front of you that says veterinary medicine is being practiced by laypersons with virtually no training and no ongoing oversight by a California licensed veterinarian that has a relationship with the shelter. There's nothing good about that. There's also no inspection authority or enforcement authority by the Veterinary Medical Board. How can that be good for animals? We worked hard on those proposed amendments, and they were rejected. So there's nothing more that we can say except that we are opposed.
An individual identified as Brian Cronin would like to make a public comment. Your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, members of the California Veterinary Medical Board. I have the privilege of serving as Chief of Animal Care and Control for the County of San Bernardino. My comments are specific to the proposed amendments that have been authored by the California Veterinary Medical Association and supported by the California Veterinary Medical Board. For decades, local animal shelters have been able to provide preventative vaccinations to homeless animals housed within an animal shelter facility, administer medications that are prescribed by a veterinarian, and provide over-the-counter treatments that any pet owner could provide to their pet. The amendments to Senate Bill 1347 would now require all animal shelters located within the state to be regulated by the Veterinary Medical Board in a manner consistent with veterinary hospitals or clinics. Once the premises permit is obtained, the animal shelter would then be required to ensure all staff, including animal control officers who handle controlled substances, obtain a veterinary assistant controlled substances permit, which results in an additional cost burden to local shelters. Current law allows animal control officers to utilize controlled substances for animal euthanasia when properly trained and certified. While the amendments proposed by CVMA may appear to provide greater protection for animals, in all reality, due to the significant financial impacts presented to local governments and the animal shelters they support, many jurisdictions would be required to reduce services provided to animals to comply with the enhanced standards. The amendments will result in an additional unfunded state mandate imposed on local jurisdictions and is inconsistent with the governor's intent to reduce the euthanasia of homeless pets throughout the state. If animal shelters are forced to reduce services, euthanasia of homeless pets will increase. It is estimated that up to 4 animal shelters within the county of San Bernardino would be required to close if SB 1347 were to pass with the amendments presented by CVMA. The referenced shelters serve remote areas of the county where the only veterinary facility that may be available is a corporate-owned hospital, such as a VCA hospital, that are traditionally unwilling to assume the responsibility to serve as a licensing manager for an animal shelter. These facilities will most likely not meet the veterinary facilities guidelines established within the Practice Act and would require significant facility modifications or remodeling to comply. This is the cost impact of a result of the amendments to 1347. You will note the amendments presented by CVMA state the board may, by regulation, adopt minimum standards for the provision of limited veterinary services. This language allows the Veterinary Medical Board to establish additional unfunded mandates at any point in the future. In closing, we appreciate the board's desire to enhance standards and care for homeless animals. We believe the amendments proposed by CVMA will actually have negative impacts on shelter facilities, the animals those facilities serve, and are unfunded for many shelters who struggle financially, especially in remote regions of the state. For the reasons mentioned, we respectfully request that you support SB 1347 in its current form. Thank you so much.
An individual identified as Kate Hurley, your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, this is Dr. Kate Hurley. I'm the director of the UC Davis Correct Shelter Medicine Program, and I was one of the original members of the group of members of CVMA, the CVMB, and veterinarians from public and private shelters throughout California that met between 2005 and 2008 to create the FAQ that currently exists on the CVMB website. So I thought I would provide a little historical perspective on that as one of those original members. And I'm happy to have further conversation with you all about that with respect for the time of this group today. I felt that FAQ did an elegant and effective job of addressing the dilemma that there are shelters that are unable to retain veterinary services, either because there's not a veterinarian available or willing in their area, or because there's a gap between veterinarians when a veterinarian has left. And I think one thing that's important and between when they can retain the services of another veterinarian. One thing that's important to acknowledge that we discussed a lot between 2005 and 2008 is the exigency around which shelters need to be able to provide basic preventive services to prevent the spread of infectious and zoonotic disease within animal shelters. So several commenters have addressed the question of euthanasia and the irony that that is the single thing currently permitted to animal shelter staff. But additionally, some shelters bring in dozens, even hundreds of animals a day. And if there is even a one-day gap where animals are not vaccinated, where prophylactic deworming doesn't take place, that can result in devastating consequences for the whole population and put public health at risk as well. So these practices need to be available to every shelter every day without a gap. And that means training needs to be continuously available and readily available. I'm also a co-author of the Association of Shelter Veterinarians Guidelines for Standards of Care. And my job is to consult with shelters in California, nationally, and across the world. So I'm deeply invested in seeing good and humane and safe practices happen in animal shelters. And my life's work is to enable that for every shelter. But I will say that, like Jennifer commented, Jennifer Laredo commented, I've seen some troubling practices in animal shelters. Consistently, it has not been around the misapplication of preventive practices by untrained staff, but rather the failure to perform these basic preventive practices, such as vaccination on intake or prophylactic deworming, to make sure that animals don't shed zoonotic pathogens into the environment that can transmit across the population. I feel like we've come a long way in terms of enabling shelters to meet the guidelines for standards of care, and certainly room for further progress in ensuring that every shelter in California has access to the resources that they need to meet all of the guidelines for standards of care, including the provision of preventive care to animal shelters. I feel like this bill would codify the FAQ that I feel like has served us well for over a decade. And the one other thing I wanted to say is I also, of course, oversee the training of veterinary students in shelter medicine at UC Davis. So we're doing our best on the supply side to ensure that veterinary services are available to animal shelters in California. And I have consistently seen that there's been an explosion in the growth of the use of shelter veterinarians in California in the 10 years since the FAQ was published. So I think fear that shelters will use the limited ability to provide prophylactic and preventive services to animals will discourage the appetite to retain veterinary services at least it's inconsistent with what I'm seeing about shelters' desire to have veterinarians on staff.
Next, I have an individual identified as Brandy Kutzel. Your microphone is unmuted.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm here to speak on behalf of the San Francisco SPCA, America's fourth oldest humane society, and one of the most well-respected institutions in both sheltering and veterinary medicine. I think some of you may be aware, in addition to our extensive sheltering operations, we run 2 full-service veterinary hospitals for privately owned dogs and cats. Our organization is among the largest in the country. We employ nearly 300 professionals, 40 of them are veterinarians. The SPCA knows both animal sheltering and we know veterinary medicine, and we know them both very well. That is why we strongly support SB 1347 as written. The bill supports the basic health and safety of shelter pets by keeping those animals healthy enough to be either adopted out in their community or transferred to communities like San Francisco who are better able to care for them. In short, it just helps optimize the supply chain for shelter pets by keeping them healthy, improving their welfare, and being able to move them throughout the state. A premise permit light approach doesn't solve for the basic fact that for decades, rural and cash-strapped shelters in California have struggled to recruit and retain veterinarians. We hear that from countless people on this today in this call. It ignores the fact that veterinarians are unavailable or unwilling to work in shelters in some regions of our state. So this means that these shelters will continue to lack the essential component of a premise permit, the veterinarian. The notion that existing premise permit holders like the San Francisco SPCA will somehow abdicate our responsibilities in light of the very narrow preventative services that would be allowed by SB 1347 is frankly absurd. It's the same as the notion that the CVMB would be unable to oversee existing premise permit holders like us who are fortunate enough to be able to provide more extensive veterinary care than administering basic over-the-counter vaccines and meds and other basic preventative care to prevent the spread of communicable disease. We respectfully request that you consider pulling your opposition and supporting SB 1347 as written. Thanks so much.
An individual identified as Susan Riggs would like to make a public comment. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, good afternoon. Susan Riggs, representing the ASPCA, speaking in support of SB 1375. I'd like to, just in the interest of time, echo the comments made by several of the preceding speakers, Ms. Sadek, Ms. Fearing, and Mr. Aldine, as well as others. And I just, in the spirit of collaboration and in recognition of the author and sponsor's willingness to continue to work with the board, I would ask that you drop your opposition and really work with the sponsor in a spirit of collaboration to find a win-win solution to avoid some of the unintended consequences that have been mentioned here today. And from our perspective, the ASPCA, really trying to avoid burdening under-resourced and geographically isolated shelters that are unable to provide veterinary services in a traditional way by keeping a veterinarian on staff, and ultimately leading to avoidable euthanasia of animals that should be thriving in their care. Thank you.
An individual identified as Dr. Sullivan would like to make a public comment. Dr. Sullivan, your mic is unmuted.
I'm on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A couple of comments. I am a former board member and a member of the MDC. And one of the original parts of our Practice Act, there's two that I want to quote. One is 4800.1. The priority of the board is protection to the public. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. And then on section 4809.5 inspections, the board inspection authority does not extend to premises that are not registered with the board. Reading the provisions of the amendments proposed by the CVMA and approved by the Veterinary Medical Board, I see that as a huge compromise to provide veterinary oversight without the veterinarian having liability. Every community, including the small communities, have to have a relationship with a veterinarian, because if they have an injured animal come in that's been hit by a car that they don't have the ability to take care of, they contact or transport it to a local veterinarian to get the initial treatment done. So if that particular veterinarian also, already has a working relationship with the shelter, and the oversight by that veterinarian has no liability, that's the compromise that I think that I think we should be following. And then there's the ability to set up the protocols to do the vaccinations, the preventative vaccinations, to do the worming with over-the-counter products, do all of those things that everyone has concerns over. So I don't see the amendments that CVMA and the board are proposing as a deterrent to the local smaller shelters. As far as the cost of the smaller shelters, they've always, if they're doing veterinary medicine to any degree, they've always had the requirement to have a premises permit. It's not an added cost, especially if we're, permitting them not to have any fee. So I'm not seeing the burden that is being presented by the proposal of this bill in front of us. I think we have the avenue with the CVMA and board proposals to get beyond this and work with the smaller communities in getting the oversight that I think protects the public. I think that's the bottom line that we have to look at. Thank you.
There are no additional public comments. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, thank you. And thank all of you, members of the public that were willing and able to join us today and give us your insight and your opinions. And I haven't said much about this, but I do appreciate all of your comments, and I appreciate the intent behind this bill. And I do think that we need to try to continue to work together to try to come up with alternatives, compromises that protect the public, but also enable shelters to do the very best medicine and the very best that they can do. We have no interest in overseeing shelters unless they're practicing veterinary medicine. That's all we have supervision over, is to try to make sure if veterinary medicine is being practiced, that the consumer has some ability or recourse for oversight. So I'm going to open it back up to the board members, though, to comment. Looks like Christina, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It was really helpful. A lot of, I think, the good information. Sorry, my computer is doing something weird, but there was a lot of good information, and I wanted to, and I don't know, it's just so odd, right, in this setting to be able to ask people questions that are now not on the call, but I'm going to try. For Melanie and Dr. Hurley, I really, I did appreciate the history that you brought to the table there that I was unaware of in a lot of regards. And I wanted just to ask you guys, it sounded from you, Melanie, said that there were multiple levels of oversight with the health and safety code, and some of the other oversight that she mentioned. And Dr. Hurley, I know it hasn't been your experience that people are sort of abusing any of these abilities, but I guess, again, our biggest concern here is that there is no oversight. So when there is a problem, not like if it isn't specifically the health and safety code, but instead is the treatment of the animals, like in the administration of first aid, the bandaging, they lose their leg, for example, if the bandage is on too tight, and that's happened multiple times, or something like that. Like there's really nobody for the people of California or the staff to go to, because it doesn't probably fall under any of those organizations or enforcement agencies. And it isn't about enforcement per se, but again, about protection of the public here. So I'd love to hear what you think would happen in a situation like that, so that we can feel more comfortable about this. I mean, I think that's really our biggest concern here, is the fact that there isn't, anywhere for this to go if there's a problem. And then I'm still confused why a limited premise license that's free, and we could probably work with the wording of it, why that is so frowned upon by your groups. And so I'm wondering if you guys could answer that, and if that's okay to ask that, and then have them answer it rather. I don't know how this goes with this new world, but anyway, that's my questions.
Yes, it is awkward, but we can try to do that, Christina. Moderator, is there a way that you can unmute?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can. Who is it that you were wanting to hear from? I heard Melanie and
Dr. Hurley.
Dr. Hurley has been unmuted, as well as you said you wanted Melody Sadek as well?
Yep. If they want to answer, I don't, they're not required to.
Dr. Hurley, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. And I agree, Christina. This is very weird. And so I just want to offer up, like, I'm happy to have a conversation in whatever context, in follow up, if that would be helpful. This is a quick and strange way to go through years of history. And I feel your concern, because we also are a group that's commonly reached out to when members of the public or shelter staff perceive that really problematic practices are in place at shelters. And I guess probably we each have our own biases of what we hear about. You may hear about sort of the misapplication of veterinary care, a bandage that was placed too tight. But again, the vast majority of what we hear about has to do with practices beyond veterinary services, or related to the lack of providing those veterinary services. As I said, the most common is failure to vaccinate on intake, with the resultant massive disease spread. But also things like improper housing. So an animal getting its leg caught in the chain link of a fence, or bitten because the animal in the kennel next door could reach through and bite the animal, in the cage next door, or failure to feed wholesome food, or failure to control pests that are in the environment, maybe attacking the animals. And so I've seen some really troubling things, and that was what, part of what was the impetus for the formation of the committee that wrote the ASV guidelines for standards of care in animal shelters. And there's over 500 of those guidelines, but no enforcement body to require shelters to comply with those. We are not in a position of enforcement, and instead our approach has been empowerment, I guess, basically, in information and
and enabling shelters, doing everything that we can to enable shelters to come into compliance with all 500 plus of those guidelines. And one of the things that we saw in the early 2000s, which was the motivation for forming that original committee and coming out with that original FAQ, is that with the concern and the confusion that this bill ultimately aims to put to rest, I think, even more so than the FAQ, with the concern and the confusion over whether shelters were allowed to engage in those practices of vaccination or prophylactic deworming, either they stopped and the consequences were disastrous, or it was driven underground because the shelter staff strongly desired to protect the animals in their care. They understood this as a critical tool. I mean, imagine being an animal control officer who picks up an animal and it's bleeding externally and you're not empowered. And I was an animal control officer for years before I was a veterinarian. And so I can imagine this myself. It's like, oh, I'm not allowed to do this. Well, what are you going to do? Let's let the animal bleed. And so I think this provides a channel, and with the training, which we at UC Davis would be happy to help create, and we have a web-based platform that I think could provide really high quality training that would be available to every staff the day they're hired to ensure that they have, familiarity with responsible practices about use of vaccines and so on. It allows us to at least guide where there is a will, where otherwise, if we are only in an enforcement role, it's so easy for a rural shelter to just engage in these practices and not correctly, and not know how to recognize an adverse vaccine reaction, and not be familiar with just how to refrigerate and handle vaccines safely, and not be aware of just the limited set of vaccines that we recommend in a shelter. And so I feel like by allowing this, we will provide more transparency and build more connections with those shelters where otherwise practices might not be ideal.
Thank you, Dr. Hurley. This is Melanie Sadek. I just want to remind, based on Cal Animals numbers, 75% of the animal shelters in California operate under a premise permit. There's an incredible amount of privileges that come with that and offer us the ability to really provide exceptional care. So this conversation is really about 25% of the shelters in our state. And though the shelters right now, whether 1347 passes or not, they're still doing the work that is trying to be codified in 1347. So nothing is really going to change. Nothing starts to change until the sunset, the regs pass and get into effect if SB 1347 fails. Since these facilities are operating under health and safety codes under the Department of Food and Ag, and also civil and criminal law, when people do have issues with treatment within those facilities, they can go to board supervisors, they can go to city staff and escalate some consequences for those shelters if something has gone wrong. There is oversight that's happening, and then there's also personal and criminal liability for civil lawsuits or criminal lawsuits. When it comes to the limited permit, really, I think it's great that the CVMA was trying to evaluate how we could come up with ways to come up with a compromise. But the problem still stands that even with that limited permit, the facilities, the shelters would still need to adapt their physical structure to meet the permit requirements. And they'd also still have to find money to hire a very skilled person and add to their payroll. And really, I do wish that we had the money to do it. But right now, we're already seeing shelters in California close due to COVID. And so unless we can really find a way to provide these financial resources so that these shelters can afford to do it, even with these modifications, it's just not a possibility.
Jennifer, you had your hand up.
Yes, I am starting to see and understand why there is so much contention As I said earlier, a lot of this I think is just a misunderstanding in the wording. So I'm an RVT and I have my degree in public administration, and I still don't understand a lot of what's going on here. So last meeting, the authors of this bill in CAWA were under the impression that the CVMA amendments were going to try to take away the authority to euthanize animals, and that was not the case. It was just the way that things were worded. So I want to get some clarification. So I'm going to want to hear from Dr. Miller from the CVMA, if we could unmute him, and then of course Tara, because she knows everything. So one of the things that I've heard a lot is everybody saying that, you know, we can't vaccinate and deworm animals just like an owner could. First off, I want to clarify, an animal shelter is not an owner. They are considered a depository for animals. These animals have owners. If I'm in a car accident and my dog is with me and is taken to the shelter, that is still my dog. So I do want to clarify that an animal shelter is a depository. But from what I'm understanding, this bill is to prevent unlicensed or our opposition to this bill is because we're trying to prevent the unlicensed practice of veterinary medicine. Nobody is saying that the shelters can't vaccinate and deworm. If I walk into a feed store, yes, I can absolutely buy vaccinations. So I just want to get some clarification on that. Is there any intent to prevent animal shelters to vaccinate and deworm? Because that seems to be the biggest issue here, is that we're going to prevent this preventative care, and I don't think that's the case. I don't know if Tara or Dr. Miller could answer that for me.
Well, and I'm going to jump in and say we also need to clarify the regulations that are in process that we wrote to try to allow indirect supervision by a veterinarian to develop protocols so that that's not a problem. So maybe Tara can speak to that too. So Tara, do you want to jump in? And then at the same time, if the moderator could unmute Dr. Miller.
Right. So CVMA's amendments would not restrict a shelter from providing prophylactic care. It sounds to me like the shelters, you know, they can't get a veterinarian to provide the indirect supervision and written protocols that are required under the proposed shelter regulations, that are also required under existing premises registration minimum standards. And they're also saying that they can't upgrade their facilities to meet the shelter minimum standards, that those regulations that haven't taken effect yet. But those were written to decrease the level of regulation that they're currently facing when they provide veterinary medicine, which includes that prophylactic care. So I see everyone talking past each other. Again, you know, we were trying to find a way to maintain a clean and sanitary facility so that the animals are protected that way. That's part of the shelter facility minimum standards. Having the written protocols, that's important to make sure that the animals treated at that facility are provided with appropriate care for the region. So we've been trying to reduce the facility requirements so that it's less expensive for shelters. We've been doing everything we can to lower the cost that way, but we were also trying to maintain a minimum level of cleanliness and appropriate care for the animals through those minimum standards. But this bill would exempt multiple types of care being provided to the shelters and completely eliminate any requirement for the facility itself to be maintained in appropriate cleanliness or other minimum standards that over 5 years this board and the NDC determined were necessary for shelters to maintain. I think that's all I've got. Grant, did you want to chime in?
Tara, that was really well said, and it was basically what I wanted to say as well. I think that the only mention that I would make to help clarify what Jennifer Laredo had said about our proposed amendments was in the proposed amendments, we had made some strikeouts to the existing bill, and inadvertently we struck out a section regarding the euthanasia authority or the euthanasia exemption that had already existed. That was not our intention to do that, and we quickly clarified that with the author, and that became a non-issue immediately. The other mention that I'd like to make is that a lot of the history that's been discussed today is up to 2008. But what hasn't been discussed as much until Tara's testimony a moment ago was that since then, the shelter community had come to the board, to the Veterinary Medical Board, saying, they're having trouble meeting some of these standards. A lot of them don't apply. And it was the shelter community that wanted specific minimum standards for shelters that are more specific. And the board recognized that they are different than private practices and that there should be some concessions made. And the board, over many years, worked with them to try to find a solution that would work. And that didn't seem to, in the end of all things, resonate well with some of them who I don't think realized that there always were minimum standards in place for them, but they think that somehow these new minimum standards that the board is passing are somehow going to trigger something, and that's a misunderstanding. It's not. They're a reduced set of minimum standards, like Tara had said, and so then that brings us right up to the threshold of this bill, and I'd like to read to the board a statement. Very brief. It says, to ensure a minimum standard of care, we endorse a regulatory scheme whereby trained shelter staff pursuant to written protocols established by a licensed veterinarian subject to VMB oversight are authorized to perform euthanasia, vaccinate, and treat for parasites without a supervising veterinarian. Recognizing the impracticality and infeasibility for many shelters of having this oversight exist in the form of a premises permit with a managing licensee who's a veterinarian, we recommend the creation of a special premises permit for animal shelters that allows the shelter director to serve as the managing licensee. I would like to point out that that letter was written by Cal Animals, and our proposed compromise was to try to concede to what they were requesting when they wrote that letter. That has not been received well by them, and our compromise has been rejected. And so the board does not need to really consider our compromise because the bill in front of you, as Dr. Nunez has stated, is what it is today. And that bill is much different than what they had indicated they wanted, and it's much different than what the CVMA feels is consistent with a minimum standard of care for all animals. So I think I'll stop there, and you guys can continue with your discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller and Tara. And then I just had a couple of more things. As Dr. Sullivan pointed out, the premises permit has always been a requirement, so this is not something new, but historically, even my memory is going back, we had talked about specific shelter standards, and we had spent a lot of time. There was a subcommittee trying to come up with standards specific for shelters, and it just wasn't going anywhere. And we had also talked about extending the scope of practice for RVTs in shelters, because that would be one place where that would be beneficial, and that really didn't go anywhere. So again, I think there are a lot of options here, but it seems like we're all talking apples and oranges. There's just been so many changes to this writing that I don't think any of us even know anymore what it is we're arguing. We're upset about things that may not even be true. There's just a lot of confusion on this. So I want to make sure that as we're agreeing and disagreeing, that we're all on the same page about each of these issues, because the animals are the top priority, but let's not forget about the staff in these shelters too.
And so I'm going to jump in, which I try not to do, but say that, Jessica, it would be helpful if you recirculated to the board the regulation packet that we did approve that did alter shelter premise permits and minimum standards, because I think we did approve those. They are in the process. And even it's hard to remember what the exact wording was because it's been a while. So it might be beneficial if we had a chance to see that. And I'm guessing it might be beneficial if the public had a chance to see that as well. So having said that, I will go on to Cheryl, has her hand up.
Yes, so I was thinking that maybe Jennifer Laredo should expound some on her experience. So she made some reference that she could talk, for days and days about cases, things that have happened. And I'm guessing that what she's referring to is not things related to vaccines or lack of vaccines or parasiticides or lack of parasiticides. But I'm curious I think for people to really understand where we're coming from, I'd like to hear some cases from Jennifer, some things she's thinking about when she reviews this.
Absolutely. So you guys know how you always tell me I'm a soft talker and you can't hear me. Trust me, when I'm yelling, I'm being heard. I have seen situations where, we're having a lot of animals come in at once. So the staff untrained. I'm an RVT. I learned a lot of things in school. There are a lot of people who learn on the job, but they would try to make up a large amount of vaccines ahead of time. Well, those of us here know that vaccines start to lose efficacy within 30 to 60 minutes after they're reconstituted. They would make some of these hours in advance, meaning that you give a vaccination and it's ineffective. It's not even preventing against what you're giving it for. There are some medications that we would alphabetize them, and some of them are very, very different. So somebody who is untrained might grab a bottle off the shelf next to something else. As somebody who has experience, I would look at the pill and know that it was the wrong one. Some people wouldn't. Again, I had seen where a rescue group was I was looking for a dog. A rescue group posted a picture of an animal, and they had a picture of the x-ray from where they'd gone to their vet, and the bones were set next to each other because somebody untrained in the shelter had tried to splint it. It was not an RVT, it was not a veterinarian, and rather than properly casting it, they did it improperly, and the leg had to be amputated. There are a lot of controlled substances that I know that the VACSP is going to be a financial burden. I would be in favor of maybe waiving the requirements, just like we do with the premises permit in those facilities, city and county, maybe waiving the fees for VACSPs as well, because there has to be some kind of background. There's a lot of controlled substances that are diverted. We have volunteers. We also had a work release program. So people who are released from jail who are doing their community service hours are now around all of these controlled substances. And when you have 60 animals coming in a day, you can't watch everything that's going on. Again, untrained people who, some animals, again, are owned and would come in with certain medications that were, dangerous to people. You have to wear gloves, maybe some cyclosporine or something, and an untrained person wouldn't know, and they're there with their hands trying to administer it. Again, I could go on and on and on, but being in the trenches for me, I saw the day-to-day detail. So again, I don't know maybe the big picture like a lot of these shelter directors and the politicians and the lobbyists. I just know what I've seen. I've seen animals that were handled improperly. I've seen animals maybe that there was, blood on the floor and nobody could figure it out. And I recognized that the dog was urinating blood. He had a bladder stone. He was about to be put into a kennel where nobody would look at him again until the next day. There are so many things that I've seen because I have experience that you cannot expect somebody who doesn't have an education and doesn't have experience to know that, and it's dangerous. And I hope that gave you some. I could go on and on. I didn't really prepare anything, but again, we have to protect the animals, but we also have to protect the staff.
It looks like Diane, and then Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to, in regards to talking about the amendments originally, there was, I think, Jamie, you asked me about how it would kill the bill, or as I said before, it's because it would add local costs. It would add cost to local government, and then it would send this bill into appropriations, and then sending a bill to appropriations is essentially killing a bill.
So if we had a no cost premise permit, how does that add cost, I guess?
So the trainings, I believe, is creating cost to the local governments. And so anything that's add any type of.
Diane, the trainings are already in the bill. The training that's already in the bill, we're not adding that.
Yeah, it seems that what has been added is going to be causing costs to local governments. So, and then, and I guess I know that we keep talking about that it's going to be taking away oversight, but we currently don't have any oversight over the shelters. And so I know that we're discussing, well, perhaps we do want to have oversight over the shelters. And if we're going to make that big policy decision, then that, shelters need state oversight. And I think this is a conversation, that we've been having. And again, I've only been a part of this since July. But that's a bigger conversation that also local governments need a big seat at the table for that. So I think it's incumbent of us to be able to continue conversations and have a better use of our time to be able to find resources for the underserved communities. I think that still these regulatory schemes that we have are only going to close down shelters or cause more deaths. And this doesn't solve the problem that we all agree upon, that we need vet care at these underserved shelters. And so I just, again, ask my fellow board members to change our position, to continue a conversation with everyone that's involved, to be able to create a solution for this that we all want. And so I think that supporting a bill and continuing communications with everyone involved is what's going to be best for the animals.
Okay, so first of all, Diana, I want to apologize for interrupting you. It's hard with the mics and the off and on and whatnot, so I apologize for that. But second, I do want to clarify that we have always had oversight on shelters that practice any sort of veterinary medicine. That's as a consumer protection agency, anyone that is practicing veterinary medicine, we have had oversight on. So this isn't a new thing. Currently, and for as long as I've been around, that we have had oversight of shelters if they are practicing any veterinary medicine, including vaccinations and whatnot, just to clarify that. But I appreciate your comments, and I apologize again for interrupting you. It looks like Mark is next.
So I entered today's meeting thinking that we do have to change our position from an opposed to a support, because this is the bill that's in front of us. And in the words of the legendary Dr. Dick Sullivan, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so that was my position coming into this meeting. From the presenters from the shelter medicine side, I didn't hear anything at all from them showing their willingness to work together, to compromise. The only thing I heard from them is reasons why it would be so disastrous, mostly fiscal. They don't have the resources to hire the veterinarians. They don't have the resources to improve the facilities and so forth. And it's written in 2008 legislation that we can do this. Why can't we just keep on doing this? Because it's written in 2008, and therefore we should be able to continue to do it. So that was discouraging, but I still think we need to keep a support position, because what I also heard was some suggestions from the members of the Veterinarian Medical Board, how we can help out with fiscal aspects of it, and not charging for a permit, citations and fines. We can potentially work with that too. We've heard from UC Davis, their shelter medicine program, how they're offering resources to veterinary students. and protocols and so forth. I see lots of solutions to address the concerns from the shelter community. So I still think we can do that. And so I still think we should support it, and hopefully we can work together. I've heard a lot of oppositions, but I've heard a lot of solutions, and we just need to whittle them all down and get it into this language. The bottom line is that right now, it's not as rosy a picture that the shelter community is painting. There are a lot of great shelters out there that are doing the best they can with the resources they have, but there's also other shelters out there that they're not talking about that are falling below the minimum standards, specifically those shelters that we want to help raise up to a level that we all want. Right now, it's up to the local municipalities to address any abuse that may be going on. We know that that same authority is supposed to take care of any abuse with the rodeos, and we know that that's not happening. Local municipalities don't care about the animals. Unfortunately, the only people that care about the animals are the people that are on this phone call. People on both sides of this issue. We're the only ones that care about the animals, and we have to fix this problem. We can't rely on the municipalities to do it. And the other thing, I have a quick question for Tara about, there was a mention about our process, about discussing issues first among board members, and then allowing the public to chime in. I wasn't aware that there was anything unusual about that process. I know it's a quick aside, but that's my other question.
I'm glad you brought that up. I believe it was Ms. Fearing that raised concern about how the board discusses its issues and waits to hear from the public until after they're done discussing the issue. So we typically follow Robert's rules to perform our parliamentary procedures, and the board, that's just how it goes. All boards under DCA and any other state or local agencies that follow Robert's rules typically discuss, deliberate an issue, then a motion is called for. If a motion is made, then that's when it's the issue is opened up to the public to receive comment. That's just standard. So we're not doing anything that other DCA boards don't do themselves. And in fact, we're following rules that have been set in place for many years and many other types of agencies and legislative bodies use.
Okay, Mark, are you done with your comments? Okay, Christina?
I keep seeing Kathy shaking her head when the local oversight thing comes up. So when I'm done, if you can maybe just say what you're thinking, I would appreciate it, because I don't have a lot of experience with local oversight. I think the rodeo thing is a good example of the inability or inaction of some of the local authorities. I was surprised to learn from Dr. Miller that the modified or limited premise permit, the idea of it came directly from the Cal Animal group, and I guess I now am confused as to how they are against this again. And I guess perhaps there is some veterinary oversight rather than just the director. But I think even if there is a veterinarian that has written protocols, and maybe Dr. Hurley and the UC Davis shelter medicine group, if that is, what is used, I think would still be appropriate if they turn that in. And the director, like when we have the licensing manager or at the veterinary hospitals, are we against it being the director of the shelter, and why is Cal Animal against that? So I guess that's sort of, I'm still confused by the lack of kind of buy-in to this idea that somebody needs to just be responsible for it, and somebody to make sure that these facilities are clean. I mean, it's not even just the minimum standards for a veterinary hospital. And again, this lack of acknowledgement that we have actually lowered our standards for shelters, not lowered, but made them different so that they could actually comply more easily. And now everybody's up in arms is really hard to wrap my mind around that too. But uh, how can any of these people be opposed to having someone who can oversee and make sure that it's just a clean facility where there isn't these chain link fences where dogs get their legs caught in, and those minimum standards that are different than veterinary hospitals, and have perhaps this limited premise permit. So that's my question and statement.
Kathy, would you like Jessica to explain the legalities of oversight from a local government agency?
Sure, and then I'm happy to explain my feelings about that too. So
go ahead. You can do what you need.
The reason, and it is absolutely in no way disparaging local government, local agencies. It's just a realistic view that they're all overworked and understaffed, and that they have to prioritize what they go after. And I think I've seen this on every level, unfortunately. And you can't particularly count on necessary oversight. I recall personally some real egregious issues of unlicensed practice with fraud and harm to animals that DAs just didn't have the ability to take up. So, I mean, I'm again thinking about the animals, thinking about obviously the shelters themselves, and it's just you cannot count on local agencies to be able to do that. They have so much on their plate, and they're especially the DAs and health agencies are so overworked and understaffed. I just think that unfortunately we just can't count on it. We have enough trouble as our board with 1,300 complaints a year, as that one man said earlier, right? And I don't blame him. He filed a complaint 2 years ago, and there's still nothing done. And we're only trying to work on those investigations. So that's my reason for shaking my head. And again, it's not like they don't care. I'm sure they care. They just don't, they have a lot on their plate.
Jessica, do you want to clarify the reasoning behind why they legally can't?
If I understand the question is why they legally can't enforce our Practice Act. Only the board has authority to enforce the provisions under our Practice Act. And so if we got a complaint or if there were allegations that the provisions in this bill weren't followed, if the person didn't do the appropriate training and was doing some services in here without the training, there's nothing that the cities and counties would be able to do to enforce because this is in our Practice Act. And maybe Tara, I don't know if Tara wants to elaborate some more on that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The board enforces the Practice Act. There's no provision that authorizes state and local county governments or agencies to enforce the Practice Act. So, we keep hearing about the Health and Safety Code and Food and Ag and Civil and Penal Codes. Those provide the requirements to the local and city counties, local, city, and county entities that they have to collect the animals, they have to deposit them, they have to get them veterinary care. Those are the requirements for how to help the animals, but there's no provision in those statutes that says if the facilities are not practicing veterinary care or providing prophylactic care appropriately or in a clean environment, then there is a consequence. Where is that? We see a lot of the requirements for the local and city counties to do something with animals, but we don't see anything that protects the animal care they're actually provided. We're it.
Diane, you have your hand up. Is that
Sorry, I don't know how to put my hand back down.
I wasn't, sorry, no, I wasn't sure. So I wanted to make sure you were, Okay.
Click on the hand again.
Mark has his hand up, but Christina, did you have your hand up again, or Mark does? Mark?
So after all this long discussion, if no one makes a motion, then our position remains the same. That's correct.
That's correct. Cheryl.
So can I make a motion? Are we at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
So I move that we continue to oppose unless amended, but I think we've come a long way. I think that there is still a middle ground that we can both sides can be happy with. I think it just needs more work. I think again that we've come a long way, and I'm hoping that there is an answer out there that we can find. I think the other side has misunderstood some of the things that some of our intent and some of the factual parts of this bill. So anyway, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
So just to clarify, if you want to keep your existing position, like Dr. Nunez said, we don't need a motion.
Okay, so we're good. Christina has her hand up though, both virtually and on the board.
Sorry. Would it be more useful to support if amended, because it would open up our dialogue even more and show that we are trying to come up with a bridge? I feel like if we stay the same, it sort of is still that wall where we're, again, I don't know. It's just a thought.
Can I reply to that? Because at the legislature, if you support if amended, all they see is support. So they won't do anything else if you say support if amended.
Okay, I have not had anyone bring up a motion, so I think it's now almost 10 till 1. So without any further discussion, I think we're going to go ahead and take our half-an-hour break. We have it 40 minutes. Is that like a horrible thing? I'd like to go ahead and have us break until 1:30 for a lunch break. Okay, thank you everyone very much. And again, I thank the public members for being here, and we strongly support the idea of continuing a dialogue and working together to try to find a compromise that is helpful to everyone. I think it's really important that we reiterate what Christina said, that we really do want to try to work together on this and to find a compromise that would work for everyone. But at the end of the day, I think we still have to look at this from this consumer protection standpoint. That's our fairly narrow, basically, tenet. So I think that at this point, we have to do. I hear someone trying to say something. Maybe that's Kathy.
Shoot, I didn't know my mic was on.
Well, anyway.
I'm so sorry. I was trying to get a dog. One thing I just wanted to say was were you going to announce that Dr. Johnson will be available?
So when we come back at 1:30, we will have Dr. Johnson join us for his interview. So we'll be able to wrap that MDC committee membership up. And again, conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict is a good thing. And so it's really important that everyone feels comfortable bringing their diverse opinions and even strong opinions to the table. That's a really important thing. And I commend all of you for being able to do that. So thank you all, and we will convene back at 1:30.
I have a quick question for the moderator. Is it best if we log out and log back in? Or if we did that, do we have to be readmitted for the purpose